Welcome to the Triple Takeover Toycast, a fortnightly podcast about Transformers and all kinds of other toys as well. We've got a bit of a special one for you tonight. We've actually got a special guest on for the first time ever, which is pretty exciting as far as we're concerned. I am Sixo, as ever, but with me are my regular hosts. First up, we've got M.A.S. from Transformers Square One.
All right.
How you doing?
All right.
Good, excellent.
Man of so many words.
Enthusiasm off the charts there, as ever. That's fantastic. We've also got Liam from Toybox Soapbox. How are you doing, Liam?
What ho? I'm very good, thank you.
What did you call me?
Did you hardly know her?
Right, exactly. Hey, man, don't ruin all my material before I've had a chance to drop it, you know? My funniest bit.
It's all right. There'll be more on that later, so don't worry.
I'm sure there will be, absolutely.
Which you didn't say again.
No, I didn't, but I did say who I was, so that's one leg up on
That's
episode
novel,
50, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
So tonight, as I say, we have a very special guest, and that is Raz. Say hello, Raz.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Very well, thank you very much. So I don't know what to call ourselves now. Quadruple quartet, something or other. I don't know. We've got to come up with a different name for the night.
Yeah,
maybe.
I'm moving in for good. That's
right.
It. I'm going to shoehorn my
You'd be
way
very
in.
welcome. You'd be very welcome.
Hey, listen, I didn't know that I was the inaugural guest.
Yeah, you are.
You are.
Well, no pressure then.
Indeed, yeah. If people listen to this and they hate it,
Yeah,
we may never have another guest.
I'm to blame. Yeah,
That's it. It's
Great.
one and
No
done.
pressure. No
right.
pressure.
Yeah, no. Good,
So-
good.
For those of you wondering why we've brought someone else on, because you might be listening to this thinking, oh my God, they've brought in a Poochie.
Yeah.
But we haven't, don't worry. There is a reason for it. We're going to talk about prototypes tonight, and Raz is very much the, fair to say, prototype expert, or would you not agree with that, Raz?
I don't know. I'm just muddling through, collecting like everyone else, I guess. I think I know.
Oh, yeah, like everyone else.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what I think of when I look at
you-
your collection. That's just like everyone else.
As you say, with the 12 shelves behind you that no one else can see. Stop it. No, I guess so. I mean, I try and do, it's just been doing it a while, haven't I? So
How long have you been doing it, actually?
that's a really good question. I never really stopped. So when I got into the rarities was my friend told me about an issue of Tomart's Action Figure Digest that was in our local comic store in 1996. And in that publication, in that issue, were pictures of the 96 BotCon. So it was showcasing the Unicron prototype.
No.
It was showcasing various other prototypes. It had the MC Axis RC kit. And obviously these are things that we could never get as kids. And I was floored, honestly. And not only that, but there were lots of advertisements, from Amok Time and John's Toys and Games, who I believe was Spencer Wilson's.
Who later did Ages 3 and Up and
Yeah, I think so. But
Blast from the Past.
originally
Wow.
it was John's Toys and Games. And
Okay.
of course, there was Final Frontier, Frank,
Yep.
Whiz Bang Toys, and all these kind of, heavy
Brian's
hitters.
Toys, maybe, as well?
Brian's Toys, yeah. Brian's Toys was another. But yeah, things like Amok Time were sort of, they had several adverts in there, and they had all the US toys that we never got in the UK. If you can't tell, my accent is from the UK.
Yeah, another
Which is-
limey.
Yeah, another limey. Yeah, so whatever I was saying, yeah. Tomart's Action Figure Digest, 96, and the next year I went to my first convention, which was the very first memorabilia show in Birmingham, which is where I met, other people and started seeing some rare pieces, and it just sort of went from there, really. And I think the allure of it was having that crown jewel, going, I want something really special, and I think that's what started it all, really.
I mean, I guess to put this into context for people, and we are going to talk about, prototypes in general and kind of pick, under the skin of kind of what some of this scene is about, because I think it is a world away from certainly how most people collect Transformers, fair to say.
Yeah.
But to put some context of who you are, Raz, for the listeners, for people that maybe haven't heard of you or what have you, because you're
Sure.
not, I would say you're not in the Transformers community. You don't make yourself such a big presence in terms of social media and things like that, do you? You've not you've got a Facebook page, but you're
Yeah.
you know, Rarebots, but you're
Yeah.
not sort of out there as like a big brand, you know, and kind of advertising that this is what you do as such, are you? So
No, it's not. I think the people that do that, it's a full-time job, and more power to them. I just honestly do it as I enjoy it. I think any more and it may become less enjoyable, or it might not. You know, I don't know. You know, I mean, you guys were at one point the same, I think. You know, but you all have your individual pursuits, and they're so big and they're so time-consuming, and to do this as well, like, hats off to you. I just do it as I enjoy it, you know.
sort of a more normal approach, some might say, but
Yeah, but what's normal? Like,
yeah.
you know, some people absolutely love, and I'm one of those people. I guess it's a time thing, and trying not to be, you know, when I have downtime, I need to try and not be quite so lazy with Rarebots, because I haven't done a post in a while, and there's a lot still to show.
And I think you saw the kind of response that you were getting on Rarebots to the stuff you were posting. And even someone like me, who's kept up with your collection for decades, you still managed to post things that I didn't know you had, and it can surprise me, let alone someone who's just joined your page, doesn't know your collection, maybe hasn't met you before.
Yeah. Right, and I really love that. I love the outpour of people, and it was really surprising, not only new people, but people that I've known for 20 years, you know, going, oh, I didn't realize you had that. And it's not like I've purposefully not shown it or told them or anything like that. It's just that when you put it on a public platform and everyone's eyes are on it at the same time, it not only garners conversation, but it attracts people from the outside, and everybody's you know, sort of talking about it and going, well, what is that? Why is that important? What does that mean? I used to have that one as a kid, but that looks very similar to the one I had. Why is this, you know, on a pedestal, and why are people sort of gawking over it? And then it's fun to kind of explain, well, actually, yeah, it is the same one that you had as a kid, but this particular one made every single one that has ever been made on the planet.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's incredible to have those kind of discussions with people. And yeah, it's been really nice, actually. So, but yeah, just I don't have the biggest presence online beyond, you know, the sort of groups and stuff. So you guys really, it's a lot, isn't it?
It can be, yeah. I think, to be fair, though, this is one of the reasons why we were so excited to get you on here and kind of, you know, share some of that information and have a chat about it. And
well, thanks for having me. You know, I said before, I've said it in person, you know, I'm a huge fan of what you guys do, and it's you know, don't take my word for it. You're burgeoning and flourishing and thriving and all the rest, and deservedly so. So thanks for having me.
We have to point out here, or I do, you guys are here for the robots. I'm not here for the robots. I'm here because Raz follows in the footsteps of St. David Jason in voicing one of the greatest fictional characters ever created. Am I wrong, Raz?
You're not wrong. And it's a blessing to be able to do that. And very, very grateful to be the most recent voice of Count Duckula in the Danger Mouse cartoons.
This is a Danger Mouse household, I got to tell you. My little boy is very much into Danger Mouse.
Yeah, it's. I mean, listen, we all grew up with Danger Mouse. It's no one can do, and you know, you can ask the cast, like, no one will ever be able to step into Sir David Jason's shoes. I mean, huge shoes to fill, and
I think he's still in them.
Yes, well, yeah,
can't get him off.
Exactly. Xander did. Alexander Armstrong did a phenomenal job.
Is it him who does Danger Mouse?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. That's it. I thought so, because that's how they reintroduced Duckula, was it? It's in Danger Mouse. It's fantastic, really good.
Yeah, because that's how it started. In originally, he was a character in Danger Mouse. Then he had his own spin-off show. So yeah.
But you do lots of voices, don't you? That's all I'm here for, is a Duckula, but lots of voices.
Yeah. I was about to say it's Hilda that he's famous for in this house. It's your roles that you play in Hilda.
Alpha and Tontu and. Yeah.
Well, I could break out some Tontu, I guess.
Oh, wow. There's a moment.
I'm here for this all episode. But, you know, you were just saying that obviously you don't have a massive social media presence, but despite that, it's very rare to come across someone who isn't aware of your collecting and isn't aware of not just what you have, because that's one element. We've got the collectors who are known for what they have, and then you've got the collectors who are known for what they do with what they have. And you basically cover both of those bases. You're in the middle of that Venn diagram because you share what you have, you educate, and by having rare bots, I mean, sure, you don't update it as much as you want to, but I'd hate to think of that not existing at all, and not just in this current guise, but in the older guise as well. When it used to be, it was a blog originally, I guess.
Yeah, it was a website originally, and the website went down in, like, I stopped updating the website in 2003, so I stopped it 20 years ago, which is wow. It's like it's a bit ridiculous. Then I did a blog.
Website.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's frightening. Vintage website. But yeah, no, this one's here to stay because even though it's not updated regularly, it started out as kind of a one-a-day thing because I was, obviously excited about the responses I was getting and talking about things, with new people. And then it sort of slowed down a little bit. Then it was once in a while, and it's not going anywhere. It's just sort of sporadic. I just need to make an effort.
Well, speaking of content, and if you want more of it and you just want to age us even faster by making us make more of it, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/triple takeover, where you can get early access to episodes. You can have a say in the content that we cover, like commissioning minisodes or voting in polls. You can even sign up as our highest tier, which is Gold Box Classics, where you get extra mini-series, you get the minisodes, so you get weekly exclusive content, and you can have access to our Discord server from multiple tiers. So check out our Patreon and see all the perks that you can get there as well.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, it's a banger. Yeah. The old Discord's pretty good. We also do have a sponsor for the evening. That is tfsource.com. So you can check them out for all your Transformers and third-party needs, as ever.
And if you want even more Triple Takeover, I know the place you can go. And before M.A.S.K corrects me and tells me what we don't have for sale, this week I had a look, and you can get a classic t-shirt. You can get 3/4 length baseball style t-shirts with all your favorite Triple Takeover stuff on there, like that G2 Throttlebot guy talks.
Yeah, name 7.
What, 7 G2 Throttlebots?
Yeah.
Crockett,
Borth.
Yeah.
Jeremy.
The Sergeant from Miami Vice. Yeah. All of those good things, you can find all that cool stuff over at rebel.com/people/triple takeover/explore.
He's definitely reading it. I saw it then. He was
He
looking
used to
at
post it above his monitor. I'm telling you.
100% reading
I want a long t-shirt, and I know I want never gets, but fingers crossed.
One more thing I wanted to ask you, Ras, before we get into the main meat of it. Is it just Transformers prototypes that you collect and specialize in?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a bit more integral than you realize when you come to sort of like jargon with prototypes. Is that, yes, I only collect Transformers. I do have a little penchant for, and this is sort of deep diving, for Metal Gear Solid trading cards, which came out in 1998 from Konami. You got 4 acetate cards in a pack. I haven't bought any in about 15 years because they're impossible to find. But in the day, I was a huge proponent of like trading cards, Marvel cards, all that. But no, I for all my life, I have always and only collected Transformers.
Well, it's probably worth kind of going back to the beginning a little bit then. I mean, firstly, to kind of set the scene, or I know we've kind of introduced you a little bit, but again, for people that don't know you, so obviously you've got now a huge collection of rarities, prototypes, test shots, just kind of the whole works, really, isn't it? And I think it's fair to say, I think we have talked about you on this podcast before, and kind of maybe not necessarily.
Many times.
We've referenced you a few times, I think, and your collection, and obviously the fact of like the Unicron prototype and things like this, and which is kind of the obvious one, isn't it? But there's much. Many more things besides, and I will never forget you showing me a little video of your collection at TF Nation last year, and just honestly nearly falling off my chair. I think I'd nearly dropped my beer because it was just when you see someone's collection and you think, wow, it's like a lot of G1, or it's that's pretty comprehensive or whatever, and it was like that, but realizing that it's all prototypes, and it's it's sort of what most people would amass as a sort of standard collection, if you like, but it's all rare stuff. And I think that was what really sort of struck me about it. So, I mean, I guess we're going to get to all of that, but it might just be interesting to kind of go back. Obviously you grew up with Transformers and whatever else.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going back that far, it was I was always a Transformers guy. My grandfather bought me my very first Transformer I should tell people that not necessarily everyone, but I would say I'm younger than the majority of kind of TF fans out there. So I was born in 1985.
I'm no longer the youngest person on this podcast.
So I had my very first Transformer when I was 2, which was bought by my grandfather, and it was a wide load. I still have the wide load.
No, wow.
But in the UK, as you guys know, that people listening might not necessarily know, is that we, not just for Transformers, but for many other toy lines, had old stock in stores for years. I mean, this obviously not a Transformers reference, but an X-Men figure by the name of Gambit and a Spider-Man figure by the name of Smythe was found in the droves, and they were made in 94. You could buy them well up until like 2011 in stores. So it was very much that vibe. So while I am, sort of 5 years out of what most people are, that is all I know, right? So from 2, it would be whatever my parents could find in stores, and living sort of in the Midlands, it wasn't the London of it all where things might necessarily sell out immediately. There was no Hamleys, which is what Maz had as a child.
Toys R Us, mate.
Along with other stuff, but we didn't sort of have that. We had Toys R Us, we had Argos, we had Toy Master, we had
BTs.
Yeah, God, yeah, BTs, yeah. Absolutely, BTs. I think my WhatsApp picture, Mazzy. I think my WhatsApp picture is the local BTs from.
Amazing.
So we had all these kinds of stuff. So it never really stops. Then there were car boot sales, and in Denmark, which I'm half Danish. My mum's Danish. We would go there, and BTs. There you go. And so there was this second-hand shop, and I remember being 5 years old in 1990, and you look at the catalogues, and this is really the start of the pre-production prototype thing, is you look at the catalogues and you see what's available in stores, but it looks different. And it's like, well, why doesn't the one that I can get look like the one in the catalogue or the one in the cartoon? And that's really the fascination and where it all started. But Cosmos was a big thing for me. Three very, very huge things. Amiga Supreme, the cassettes, any cassette, and Cosmos.
Really?
And I was on my grandfather's, Danish grandfather's, Morfar's shoulders, and walking past just a window, and it looked like someone's house, but it was a second-hand shop, and there's a Cosmos, right? And I lose my mind.
It was an MB Cosmos as well, wasn't it?
It might have been,
I remember talking to you about that.
So my mum swapped some of my grandma's dinner plates and did like a part exchange to get all these Transformers. And it just, honestly, it never stopped my fascination with it. The rarities came when Toymarts, the 96 issue that I said, and going to shows, in 97, I was at secondary school, and I was currently looking for some rare X-Men cards, and a buddy of mine said, you might want to check out this show at the NEC in Birmingham. It's called Memorabilia. And I thought, do you know what? I'll check it out. No, they won't have any Transformers there. Surely not. And they did. And my mind was blown. I'd seen lots of things I'd never seen before. I should say in the interim that Toymarts catalogue, I was very fortunate in, my Christmas wish list was vintage G1 from Amok Time Toys, and, in that sort of year gap, Christmas and birthday, sort of Amiga Supreme, Megatron, things I'd never been able to get before. But Memorabilia was another huge event, and I was able to see and get stuff that I'd never been able to get before, and it just kind of went from there. Then a company called Whiz Bang Toys held some auctions from sort of late 98 to 2003, really. And I couldn't afford a lot. I wasn't working. Well, in the latter part I was, but not immediately. So I couldn't afford everything. So I got what I could, and tried to claw it back from the collectors that won the auctions initially.
What was your first prototype, actually? What was the very first one you got?
My first prototype was from a Whiz Bang Toys auction in, I think it was 98 or 99, and it was a G2 Scavenger, and it was the sort of milk-coloured, almost looked glow-in-the-dark GT Scavenger. So he had like 3 of those, so 2 of them sold, the first one higher than the second, and I managed to get one for what was really afford it. It was like $100 or something like that. Like, it wasn't much. It might have been even less than that.
Was that sort of stuff just less desirable at that point then, I guess? Maybe with not as much time having passed? Or
Funnily enough, the desirability of these things has never changed. You have, for the people that know, because there are a lot of new collectors out there, and the new collectors go for the Optimus Prime and the Megatron, because that's what they had as a kid. And now they're getting back into it. Whereas we started doing that from Jump Street almost, and then we got the knowledge of Diaclone and Microchange and MB and Justra and all that kind of stuff, and then prototypes, and there was a very strong competitive community even then, as much as it is now, just with the same number of people.
It was really influential as well. Like I went into that community as just filling the gaps that my parents were never willing to, like, get me a Devastator or a Jetfire, and within the space of 2 or 3 months I'd abandoned those wants lists
in lieu of something rare and like
that I didn't know about a year before.
Yeah, I tell you something. I tell you, like, one of the most incredible first time experiences for me as I'm going to say an adult collector, even though I wasn't, but like, there's that sort of transition from I had it as a kid to, well,
you're buying your own stuff, basically.
I'm now, well, not even that, but yes, it is that, but you can save up for it and do this or ask for it for Christmas or whatever, because the prices then were negligible. But the first time I bought a Diaclone was from Italy, and it was in the late 90s, and it was a spheric Leo.
Oh yeah. It's one of those golden balls.
Yeah, I was going to say.
One of the golden balls that transforms into a lion.
Golden balls.
M.A.S.K's golden ball.
I'm going to take that audio and reuse that, I think, every time.
You can have that. That's a gift.
Yeah, if that's okay.
It's like one of those things.
Exactly, right.
M.A.S.K's golden ball.
We'll just splice that in every time.
Happy birthday. And this was the first time. It was case fresh. It was 35... Well, it was £35 in lira.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was case fresh. I opened the seal. There was tape in it. I do remember that. And it was like a brand new. It was completely alien to anything that I had experienced, that you had experienced, that anyone in the UK or the US, unless you sort of went abroad as a kid or was sort of perhaps half Italian or half Japanese or whatever. If it was the first time I'd experienced that, and the transformation, and it just, I was in love instantly. Absolutely 100% in love. And then from there, you get into the packaging variations, and it's anyone that's listening to this knows that it's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, it very quickly goes from recreating experiences to exploring new ones.
Yeah, and I think it does that with anything, though, if you think about it. But this, because we grew up in the golden era. I'm absolutely convinced that we grew up in the golden era of this kind of thing.
Do you mean as kids for the toys that we got as kids, or do you mean as
for the toys as
collectors?
kids? It has a knock-on effect, doesn't it? I mean, we will find out what it's like to be, an Armada kid, for example. I think we're touching upon that now.
Oh yeah, I think that
makes me want to be sick
happening.
in my mouth.
Yeah.
But I do think we had the golden era of all of that.
Do you think that maybe a big part of that was also not just the toys and the 80s toy lines and everything, but that also when the internet came into play with all of it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we all say this. The negative aspects of it all, like I don't like, but when we were just discovering certain websites, like I remember John Kierstead, and his website was just like, oh my goodness, and he was the first one, or one of two of the first people to have a G2 Defensor, and he found it on eBay in like the week eBay opened or something. I might be paraphrasing. We had spoken about it years ago, but it was in the fledgling years of eBay, and he just found it on there. For those listening that don't know, that is an unreleased G2 piece, and to see that on the internet for the first time, that grips your interest. It piques your interest, and you're like, what is that, and where can I get that?
That's what Sixo was saying about those Beast Wars prototypes when he saw them for the first time on the internet.
Yeah. It really was. I remember it very distinctly. I mean, they're toys that have all been released now.
Yeah.
Like it was Beast. I remember it distinctly. It was Beast Wars second. Galvatron was the one that really just blew my brain because this was at a time where I was into Beast Wars. So you're talking 96-ish, and you had the catalogues. You could see what you could buy on retail shelves, and it was there in Woolworths or whatever. But the idea that actually, and this is fledgling days of the internet for me, but the idea that there was something else that I had never seen in grey prototype form, and it just, I own that toy now, and yet still, as much as I do like that toy, nothing about it quite recreates the feeling of awe that I had looking at that prototype when I was probably 14 years old. Just like, what is that? It was incredible.
And you've touched on a really big point about this entire discussion.
Well, speaking of exactly that, for anyone who maybe needs the clarification or the definition, in the case of toys, especially 80s toys or 90s toys, what is classified as a prototype? What is a prototype?
A prototype is, for me, any stage of pre-production.
So pre-release, anything that is created before the version that gets released in the shop.
Yeah, for me. Some people say that the earlier prototypes are prototype. It's been one of those discussions, but it just is anything that is pre-production. So before it gets mass released in a shop, for me, that is pre-production. Obviously, if you then say a prototype, this is a handmade but a first shot then, which has been, and I'll explain this in a sec, which has been made from a plastic mold, is a prototype because it's very early on. It's, all of pre-production / prototype kind of melds into one.
Is it like one of those sort of all test shots are prototypes, but not all prototypes are test shots kind of thing?
Well, 100%, because not all prototypes are test shots. A test shot, so I'll give a rough breakdown, and I did touch upon this earlier because I don't collect any other toy line apart from Transformers, and I said that was quite an important thing to remember because I don't frequent any other forums, any other websites, and I never have, not Star Wars, G.I. Joe, nothing like that. And I know that terminology between collectors is very, very different to Transformers, or can be. Also, we've taken things, or some people that pioneered these sayings have taken them from G.I. Joe websites and forums and Star Wars websites and forums and taken them on board to Transformers. And also when things are discovered and physical paperwork is discovered, in the case of, everyone would call something a test shot or a first shot, but in-house they would call it an engineering pilot, an EP. But that's not the colloquial term. But those colloquial terms came from a real place because they were probably colloquially used around the R&D department, a test shot, first shot, a T1, that kind of stuff, which a lot of people don't realize. Optimus Prime says T1 on it. The definition of that T1 is a first shot, right? But it might be in a totally different context. So you're dealing with different toy lines. You're dealing with different terminologies between fans. The jargon between fans and people that used to work at the companies is very different. And because it's not always the easiest thing to talk to people that used to work at these companies, or they might not necessarily remember every aspect of it.
Yeah, we found that with Andy Cousins quite a lot, didn't we, at TF Nation?
Yeah, because, well, you think about it, it's a job to him. It might be a passionate job, but he's not going to remember every piece of minute detail that was, whereas he might remember something that someone else doesn't remember that used to work at that company. So what I'm trying to say is, in a roundabout way, is you've got to take everything with a bit of a grain of salt, because unless it's written down, it didn't happen, really, if we're talking about it in sort of factual ways. So essentially, you would start off with a concept drawing. An idea turns to pen, get that on paper. The other thing to remember, or to keep in mind, is that each person creating the physical prototype likes to use different materials. So the sculptor might use clay, the sculptor might use, it could be wood, it could be this, everyone's different. And in speaking with one of the former heads of Transformers, every toy could possibly be different.
That's interesting already, because you often do see this thing where people, I think, take a little bit of knowledge of some of this stuff and then apply it uniformly.
Right.
So, I see various discussions where people are like, oh no, it's always a wooden prototype, for example. And
That's right, yeah. And you always think there must be, well, I need to find the wooden prototype of that character because it must exist.
Now, and that's really really important to note, because while that might be the case for certain things, it's not always every step is that and regimented and this, that, and the other. One, I was speaking to this guy who, I won't name, it's not really my place, but he was saying even with licensing with different cars for the Binal Tech, for the, trying to get the licensing is approached in a vastly different way.
Yeah.
You can't approach it as if it's uniformed. I'm coming at you with my toy idea. I want to license your company, but it's so regimented. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that was really a sense I got of, like, I was reading quite a lot about, this is obviously now, it's all changed now with Porsche and we've seen with Rise of the Beast that seems to be fairly in the bag. But I was at the time reading a lot, and it struck me that a lot of people, when they got Volkswagen, were like, oh, well, of course they'll get Porsche now as well because of the link up there and everything. And it was like, well, no, because they're still independent car companies, essentially. Yes, there's some ownership and everything.
Different brands.
Different brands.
Exactly,
and
different
brands, people
brands,
involved.
Completely different people, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not, nothing about toy production seems to be one size fits all at all.
And it's really not. And I'll go one further. I have mentioned G.I. Joe, and this is so reductive, so please don't get angry with me, all the listeners, but this is a very reductive term. For all intents and purposes, the majority of Star Wars figures and the majority of G.I. Joe figures share a very similar DNA. Transformers, from an engineering standpoint, has no equal. It has absolutely no equal. Like, it just doesn't. You might have a vehicle that can do something and can do this, and you obviously the level of design and engineering in G.I. Joe, the vehicles and all this other stuff, and M.A.S.K is another one. It really requires such, and I don't know how they did it for those, let alone Transformers. So, well done, hats off.
Yeah,
thank you to the people that made these things that we're talking about now. But there is a difference. Transformers are their own entity. It is a car that changes into a robot.
I think they've moved beyond cars occasionally too.
No. So they're cars.
Pigs.
Actually,
Pigs.
We've said this on the show. We've said Transformers are unique in that they have to be a convincing alternate mode, whether that's cassette, car, plane, dragon, and then they have to go to a convincing robot mode.
Playable
typically.
Robot, yeah.
Yeah. It has to look good in those modes, and then the conversion has to be fun as well. It's not just workmanlike. It has to be an enjoyable process. So it's a puzzle, it's a display item, and it's a toy in every sense of a toy. And I don't know any other toy line that had that challenge for every single product.
It's the form, isn't it? The form is so different. Like you were saying there about G.I. Joe, the form of those figures, it's very similar throughout, so it's very easy to model a toy line around it.
Again, a reductive way of saying it, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But with Transformers, every robot is unique. You get so much of retools, but everyone has to do something completely different and look very different. It's its own toy, whereas, like you're saying with M.A.S.K, they do have this one toy, one sort of toy, which I think then fits around and is based around.
Which sort of brings it to the one of the first physical stages of a prototype, which is a mock-up, and that can be in two different arenas: a looks like and a works like. So a works like prototype is the mechanics of it, and it looks like is what we want to sell to the customers.
So the works like could be a resin, or it could be a wood, it could be something like that.
Yeah, I mean, styrene. If you get these sheets, they cut them up, they glue them together. It is a resin. It is a resin, styrene, whatever material you use. It's a very early prototype that shows the mechanics, the workings of it to your bosses and potential investors, etc. The looks like is what you hope that works like will look like.
Yeah.
When you sell it to your main audiences. A great example of this would be the 1986 Nor. Doesn't transform, but in both it's a prototype of both modes, the robot and a separate prototype of the shark mode. So that's what it will look like in robot mode, or that's what we aim for it to look like, and that's what we aim for it to look like in shark mode. This other prototype that works like is how it will transform. So you have to combine those to make the product.
Those are the two that were in the Laserdisc booklet, right? The
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah. In one of the Laserdiscs, the other ones were slightly early, and I'm not sure if that was the same thing or a different entity entirely. Then you get to again, this is just a basic breakdown. Then you get to what's known as a hard copy. And a hard copy is a very important piece here, and I think the most kind of widely known of the very, very early prototypes. You have sculpts and everything in between, but again, I'm just sort of breaking it down into the pillars of the process here. So hard copies are handmade using silicon molds, are, for all intents and purposes, the very first iteration of a fully working toy. Now, obviously, these will vary drastically from what actually comes out, and we go back to looking at the catalogues. Products and colours may vary. I'm doing quotation marks for anyone that can't see. It's exactly that. You see the grey Astrotrain. That's what it doesn't look like it. It's not just the paint, it's the head, it's the details. It looks different because it was worked on after the fact. They need to get that product out there. They need to photograph it. They need to, do all this kind of stuff for promotional materials while the toy's being made. That's why when they come up with, when they are confronted with costing problems, tooling problems, safety problems, that's a big issue. It all has to change. If you look at it like a business and a company that's, you send something, you get notes back. Well, I want this done before it gets approved. You have to change this, that, and that. And you will literally on things on the paperwork that comes with either prototypes or artwork, you'll get notes from your superiors or the design superiors. Any sort of HODs will put notes on for you to change as a designer.
I remember that Diaclone smokescreen had the scribbles on it, like the actual toy, the production toy. The Diaclone had don't put this here, put an Autobot symbol here, just drawn directly onto the figure.
What else would you do? If you think about it from a business point of view, the best thing to do is get the toy. Well, this isn't right. I want that sticker moved there. I actually want that changed a bit. I want the paint a slightly different hue. So if you approach it with that mindset, it makes absolutely perfect sense for it to be on the toy, and then the sign-off name will be on it. And we go back to Andy Cousins, his name, not only his but other people's names.
Yeah, we were really fascinated to see, some of his, and people again that were at TF Nation, some of you will have seen this, some of his drawings and things, but also notes that he had about specific toys. There was a big thing around the design of like G1 Rotorstorm's canopy and changing the shape of it. And his, handwritten notes saying that he wanted it a different shape here and bits there and whatever. It was really interesting to see.
It is. And I can relate to that because I encounter that, on a daily basis with instant feedback from a director, but also other people. So then from these hard copies that transform and do all the stuff, and they're made of resin, and it feels like a cross between clay and bone and wax, it's heavier. It feels more substantial, like you're sort of...
super dense, right?
Yeah, it just feels good, I think a lot of this stuff, not just this, but in anything, in terms of quality, it's all about haptics. I feel if you feel something is just tangibly more dense, as you said, Mazzy, like it's just better. It feels better quality. It feels like, well, this is, and it's no joke because they cost at that point probably about, for a small toy in the 80s, was over 100,000 to do these prototypes, including sort of,
$100,000
at least. Yeah.
Wow.
To create one of those resin prototypes at that stage, like beyond mock-up, hard copy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Including working hours and everything. It is so expensive.
That has blown my mind. I would have had no clue. And that is how much it would be. And that I suppose that also explains why there isn't a sort of automatic process with a lot of this stuff, whereby they do, set prototypes for every toy at every stage. Because I can imagine that they would have wanted to have kept the cost down as much as possible.
But also it's a puzzle, I mean that literally and figuratively. It is a puzzle that you're trying to make for children, and it is also a puzzle like, well, how do I keep the cost down? How do I? And this is why things are cancelled and why things are changed, because it would be too expensive to put electronics in something but they could still sell it without, or no, you know what, when we can't sell it without these electronics. That's the gimmick, or it's the price point that we're going to charge for the size and this, that, and the other.
Would that have happened? Would they have wanted to release a toy with electronics and then realize that they couldn't fit it into the price point, so they had to kick the size of the toy up to the next size class just to have it have electronics?
That I don't know, because the electronics only were really prevalent in 3-4 toys in G1. I don't know about modern day stuff. I do know that I think some stuff in G2 had more sophisticated electronics and then had to be a little more simplified, I think. But those, like the breadboard prototypes, that's another phrase, that's what that's for. It's that testing process. Well, this is what I want to create. Can we do it and fit it in the budget for this price point, And I think now, and you'll have to forgive me, everyone that's listening, I don't know what a Voyager class is and this class and that class. I don't either. I couldn't tell you.
It's not the same as it was even 10 years ago. So in terms of part count or cost or construction or complexity, it's a moving target. It's moving goalposts. Really.
I imagine, and it's so much. I think it's more cost effective, or it's getting to be more cost effective to try ideas out. Putting them into sort of a 3D physical thing is a different thing entirely. But yeah, in the 80s, that's roughly what it would cost. Having spoken to previous employees on this specific line, again, Transformers just seems to, from the people I've spoken to, just seems to be a completely different animal.
Wow, I suppose with the advent of stuff like 3D printing must be a godsend for stuff like this, for like prototyping a couple of ideas.
Yeah, I think it is. But I do think it's a shame because you lose the old, the lost wax process is a beautiful process in anything, in jewelry, and, whatever. And I just think you lose those, what's the phrase I'm looking for? You lose those kind of trades, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's easier. I'm not saying it's more difficult. I'm just saying it's more involved in the old days. Yeah. It seems to me. I've never worked on these things. I'm only going on experience, third, fourth-hand experience. But you do lose those kind of
There's a culture
skills.
To it, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a culture to it. But you get more done. And you can sell more. Yeah. Because it is for kids at the end of the day, really.
The speed of being able to do it in real time, isn't it? You can just whip something straight into a machine, pop it out and see how it works.
Definitely more efficient these days. It does seem like there's kind of a romanticism, if you like, about the sort of old 80s and 90s prototypes for things.
Because it was better.
Well, it's also cell drawing. It's anything. Yeah. But in our era, it's, why isn't it on vinyl? And in that era, why isn't it sung live? Life is always changing. That's always the case.
Welcome to Triple Dinosaur here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I do think, again, though, some of that is down to the internet because, again, it's this sort of mystery around some of this old stuff that we didn't see at the time. Whereas now, very often, there are pictures of prototypes up on like a designer's Instagram page, for example, soon after a reveal or something like that. So it's a different beast these days. And I actually think that there's a lot to love about where we are now in terms of the transparency of it all and, the fact that there's so much information and everything else. But that I also do agree that there's something so delightful about all the old stuff where actually it's like
mystery.
Exactly.
There's nothing to uncover anymore. There's no
it's too accessible. Yeah.
Maybe so. I mean, I know I will be sad when there's no more vintage mysteries to solve, when there's no more where did this start, what version of that was it, how did we get to here from there. I mean, just the other day I saw a Toy Fair catalogue that I'd never seen before and saw the only ever version of Blue Streak with the black hood and a Transformer sticker on I'd ever seen. Like that particular Toy Fair 1984, I had never seen in all these years. I'd seen so many Blue Streaks and then the production Blue Streak, but I'd never seen the black hooded one with Transformer stickers next to all the other 84 cars. And that was a huge thrill. Like they did go through that phase of mocking up. Your face tells me you haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it.
This is amazing. I'll send you the picture because I had to save it. It was astonishing. Like I've never seen the 84 Toy Fair.
I don't recall seeing it.
It must have been a really early one. It's got to be between Blue and production. So it was like this one step.
Or at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah. But that's the kind of stuff that I'd hate when that's over.
And you see, you've just told me something that I don't think I know. And that is why I love it. What's the point in just knowing absolutely everything about something?
Yeah.
There is still, and you say that, Maz, like every single time that we broach this conversation, we have a chat about, oh, well, I guess we know it all now, and all the mini variants. And that's just one small thing. Oh, there's another one that we'd never seen before. I just think it's too vast by its very nature to
almost
know
through its disorganization, almost through its lack of process and
They're
uniformity.
Discovering it as they go along, and no, we've got to change this mark now because we've brought production down by just tweaking this little bit, and we've got to make a note of what part this is, so we've got to change the stamp, and we've got to add a bag now to this seeker accessory because they're falling loose everywhere, so we're just going to secure them. Well, now, from Diaclone to Transformers, we know kids just open boxes, so we're going to put some tape on it, but not right at the close of Diaclone, just a little bit before, so you've got stuff that, you know what I mean? So it's just so it's very, very intricate.
It feels like, again, just as another variance to kind of how things are done now, it feels like stuff was a lot more, I don't want to use the word ramshackle because I think that's probably a little bit unfair, but a little bit more done on the fly at times as well back in the 80s, whereas now
slapdash.
Maybe slapdash is a fair assessment, but I don't mean any of this in a bad way. Like, I don't mean it, because now it's another part of what contributes to it all being such a mystery, isn't it, and such a wonderful sort of tapestry. But it's definitely, there's a lot, so many running changes, so many little kind of adjustments along the way, so many sort of, the fact that there's so many variants across different continents and countries and things as well, it all sort of works into the mix of it, I think.
Running changes is a good one because just when you've got your head around sort of static changes and these big pillar shifts in the design of a piece, you think, well, we're going to keep doing it during production.
Yeah. And it won't all be changed at the same time. They won't change box, toy, accessory, and paperwork at the same time. It'll be all of the same, new paperwork, all of the same, new box, all of the same. So there's about 4 or 5 transitional changes between A and B, which is the big shift that we thought were the only things that existed.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for like a Tuesday trail breaker. Do you know what I
mean? Yeah, and it'll be different regionally as well. I mean, the whole no grey border on the early 84 Transformers. I mean, we thought it was simple as saying, oh, if it doesn't have the grey border between the cellophane window and the artwork, that's the first release. And it's not. It's just in that region, it might have been, but not down south, so it's just so hard to, because you've got people in factories assembling toys, and this factory has this assembled part and that factory has a different one. So grey roller Optimus and blue roller Optimus don't come from the same factory, but may have been totally simultaneous.
Yeah, and you won't keep track of it without, like I said, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. It's so, and provenance with prototype collecting is I would say the most important part of that.
I was going to say, I mean, there must be, I guess, a lot of worry doing what you do about, well, what is this actually? Is this a legit thing? Is this, I mean, firstly, is someone, have they just made it themselves, I suppose, as a worst case? Or B, is it something that seems like it might be a new find or a legit item, and actually it's just sort of something, more ordinary?
Yeah, you've got to, it's a really tough one, and it is getting more difficult with, people doing their own stuff. And I do make a note, and going back, I want to say around 10 or 15 years, there was a very interesting, you might remember this, the sort of headmaster. It looked like Power Master Optimus Prime, but it wasn't. And it was like, this is being advertised as a prototype. And we got to the bottom of it, and it was just a guy had made it. And that's fine. But if you're trying to deceive someone, this is difficult enough as it is.
Yeah.
Like, I have done this for so long, and you still get sort of bamboozled. There was a game that I had never seen before. It was a Headmasters in a cartridge, Japanese Headmasters game.
The Famicom Disk System.
Yeah, but it was, exactly, on the Famicom Disk System, and this was a Headmasters in a cartridge, and I'd never seen it before, and it was a clear case, and I thought, I jumped to the conclusion, 1 and 1 makes 4, and I thought, well, I've done all the research I can, or I know how to do in the areas in which I know how to do them, because I don't know anything about, beyond having a Mega Drive, I don't know anything about sort of variants and things like that within the computer game industry. I have no idea. Collecting community, sorry. And this was clear, and it ticked all the boxes for what I know. And I sort of, instead of going, well, could this be a prototype? I was like, no, this is a prototype. Obviously, I found it, and the circumstances. And then a computer game expert who collects, I think he just collected Famicom or something super specific, as we're talking about now. But for computer games, he said, no, this is a fake, and he sent me a link to something that I would never have found. And you're like, oh, I've been doing this a long old time, but I'm not a computer games expert. But you take a bit of this information and a bit of that information, and you put them together, and you're like, well, this has got all the markings of, but it's just not. So you can fool people that have been doing this a while. You can fool people that have been doing it for 10 minutes. But if you know what you're looking for, and there are subtle things to look for, you can sort of make an educated guess.
It's doubly hard with Famicom Disk System stuff, because as well as being sold as retail discs, they were sold a little kiosk where you could take them in and have games copied onto them. So they're all over the place. That was the idea of it. You could go into a shop in Japan and into a kiosk and just have different games copied over whatever you had. So those discs you constantly find with the wrong sticker on it as to what the game is. So you'll often see it scribbled on the back, like, I don't know, Paperboy over a Zelda sticker or something like that.
No kidding.
Yeah, because that was what it was. It was a disc-based add-on for the Famicom, which was the NES over here. And
that I did not know that, and that's really interesting, because the Japanese in general had I don't know the sort of toy production today, but had this sort of very forward-thinking mindset for collectors in terms of the styrofoam.
Yep.
Yeah.
Preserving everything, making it for collectors, and just being able to rewrite a Zelda onto a, wow.
The thing is, though, as a buyer, would you even test it out? For example, if someone was to buy that and it was a different game, like in your case, like what was the likelihood that you would have ever put that in a Famicom Disk System to find out?
Absolutely,
right. So in your mind, it would be exactly what you thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, the question mark is there, but if I don't have any other examples, I mean, this guy who, like I said, knew what he was talking about, sent me a link, and I'm like, okay, there you go. Knowledge is absolutely key, and it can be something very small or something very big. If you don't know about it and you don't know everything about it, it's vicious. It's vicious, very difficult to find out.
So was it on a cartridge then? Because the Headmasters was on the disc system, so I assume, was it like a Famicom cart that they'd put it on, someone had?
Yeah,
because it wouldn't run on a Famicom. Because
it was on the cartridge, and I'd never seen it on a cartridge, only on the disc. And I thought, well, and it's clear, and it's got like weird little things in it, and I thought, well, there's a likelihood of that. And it was £5, so I took I took a punt.
Have you ever played it? It's definitely not worth £5.
I don't listen. I can't even plug in a toaster. So listen, I'm not the guy. Can't even play a CD.
I still don't think I really know what Famicom is. So
computer game.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. Is that a computer game?
It was the Japanese version of the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Oh, right. Okay, I know what a
Family
NES is.
computer.
Yeah, there we
Yes,
go.
that's what it was.
I know what a NES is.
So that was up to hard copy stage that we got to in terms of that. What comes after the hard copies, assuming it's a successful design and they want to take it further?
So one of the hard copies goes to, you've got several different stages of hard copies. You can have a silicon mold with a finite amount of pulls before the silicon mold itself breaks down, and you can no longer pull anything from it. So you have a hard copy that is painted, or 2 hard copies, 1 in each mode, 3 if it's 6-shot would have had whatever, to display and photograph in each mode. And these at this point, this is really precious cargo, because you can't make any more because the silicon mold has broken down, and it would be an absolute nightmare to try and recreate these. And be careful with them. You see kids in the Predaking commercial with the hard copy, and you're like, oh my goodness, how did that?
So those adverts contain hard copy prototypes.
They do, yes, yeah.
That must be so weird.
And supervised as well.
Just incredible to think that actually in those adverts or whatever, that kids did play with these prototypes. It's mad.
Yeah, oftentimes. I mean, not all the time.
No.
Obviously, Ultra Magnus was a mold in Diaclone, so it didn't require a hard copy, but it probably had changes made to it that required some things that weren't done on the steel mold itself. I don't know. But yeah, some of those were painted and photographed and put into Toy Fair catalogues, taken to Toy Fair, put in the commercials. These are the ones that sell your product. So you want them to look as good as they possibly can. So they're photographed on the box, in the catalogue. They are used oftentimes for the artwork illustration. So the artist will have one in front of them, and and just as a quick aside, in terms of pretenders, these pretenders are solid. They weigh about 1 kilogram each.
Really?
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Wow.
It's absolutely ridiculous how heavy they are.
Oh, man.
So they've got these and they're painting them and so on and so forth. And another one isn't painted. It's being sent to the factory to make steel molds to,
Oh, man, I really want a heavy pretender now. That's.
I mean, I'm telling you, they're all heavy, but yeah. So then you get a first shot, which is the very first plastic from a steel mold in a factory. It's the very first run.
Stop right there. This is a great place to tell a story.
Okay.
This is a story that you and I have joked about for years. You were talking about Ultra Magnus, and that not needing the hard copy because it was in production in Diaclone. Something like a G1 Decepticon plane would have been roughly the same story because they had production versions in Diaclone. But then you get to the Coneheads, right? And they had new wings, new stuff. You know where I'm going with this now. I can see your face.
I do.
So there was a sale of prototype Conehead wings in about 2007, and they were unpainted and resin. And then you had painted resin versions too. So dirge, thrust, ramjet wings, crazy sizes, crazy colors, different shapes. Like with the dirge ones, you could see why the dirge stickers on the production toy don't really fit the side of the wing because it was the shape of the prototype's proportions, and it went all the way up to his shoulders instead of stopping at his waist. So they were really different. They had to prototype the wings instead of the whole toy. And you had a thrust, right? So you had a production sample thrust missing a wing.
No, sir. I had the catalogue thrust.
Right, okay. What does that mean?
The actual piece that was used in the photograph, not a version of, or the actual one that you see in the 1985 American catalogue is the one that is in my display case.
Right, missing a wing.
Missing a resin wing.
All right, so this was a clear resin wing that had been painted over.
Yes.
And I had it.
And you had it.
Yeah, it had come to me. Yeah. So I had got it in a lot from the same seller. Actually, you didn't get the thrust from that seller.
Totally
you got the
different.
thrust from someone else.
Totally different.
Yeah. But years later, I get so these prototypes would have been at Hasbro at some point and then went their separate ways, either via a photographer or someone or some family member or something, or ex-employee.
Family member. And
so I had the wing in another lot with the other wings that I'd bought. And eventually I realized, this belongs to Raz, basically, because he's got the thrust. He's not selling the thrust. And I can't hold them onto this wing forever. I mean, this is a bit ridiculous. So I decided to
just have the one wing in a display case somewhere. That's it.
Yeah.
Were you winging it?
Do a whole article on the one wing.
I mean, I tried to get things out of him for the wing, and he wasn't having it. So I was okay, Raz, just have the wing. I'm gonna give it to you because we're mates, and that thrust needs completing. So have the wing. And this was the first toy show that I would have attended for absolutely years. I think it was Auto Assembly 2008 or something like that. 2007.
Yeah, I think
6, 8, 9.
No, that's when it was after that.
No, you're right. Yeah, no, we were already living in the home where my daughter had already been born at that point. It must have been like 2011 or something. 2012 or 2013, something like that. And so I had packed it in bubble wrap and put it in a box, and I was like, I'm going to take this to Birmingham to Auto Assembly or TF Nation. I'm going to hand it to Raz. I haven't seen Raz in years. Haven't seen loads of these people in years. This was like a big return to toy shows for me. I was so pumped. I thought, I want to see his face when I hand this over to him. And I told you I was going to give it to you.
Yeah.
And of course, I was working with Paul Hitchens at the Space Bridge behind his table. And you came up. I was like, how you doing? Long time no see. I was like, all right, I've got something for you. And I went rummaging in my box.
And he kissed me.
I might have done. Yeah.
That sounds about right, actually.
Before or after I went rummaging in my box? Was I rummaging in your box?
It's the same time.
It's more where that came from. Anyway, so I went to get this wing for you. For your thrust, after all these years how long had you had the thrust at that point?
I had it since 2005, so I'd had it at least 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
Right?
Wow, okay. And I'd had that wing since 2007, so maybe like 5-6 years myself. And I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the wing. I was like, have I left it at home? Like, it was in a box. I'm sure I brought the box with me, and I brought stuff for other people too, and I couldn't find this prototype G1 thrust wing. And I just thought, you know what? Maybe I left it at home. So I thought I'll call my wife and make sure it's at home. But of course, it was in a cardboard box by the door. And recycling. It was the day for the recycling and everything. I was like, oh my god! All right, I need to call and find out where this is. And I called and I said, is there a box by the door? Is there anything in the box? She goes, there's nothing by the door, but your mum has just taken out the recycling. I was like, can you check, please? So she opened the door to the home, and my mum was on the stairs with the boxes because she was with our daughter, who was really young at the time. And she just asked my mum to bring the boxes back. And sure enough, inside one of those boxes was the prototype wing that was on its way to recycling after all these years.
I couldn't believe it.
Unreal. Yeah.
That's incredible.
That is a sign that triggers me. It really does.
So hang on. Rez, do you have the wing?
Yes, it's good. I think I posted it to him
next TFN.
Yeah. I'm on the edge of my seat here. Like, hang on, is it, where it should be?
Yeah,
he got to me.
he posted it to me, but that was stressful.
Can you imagine if I had been responsible for sending a G1 prototype thrust wing to the recycling? That would have been on me forever.
That's it.
It's almost like they're determined to stay separate, isn't it? This wing is like, nope, we're not being reunited.
Well, a buddy of mine recycled the original G1 Devastator box artwork.
What?
Oops.
Oh.
Just before they came, he retrieved it.
Oh.
All right. Wow.
Wow.
Got to create a bit of suspense. But he and I, it was very, very close.
I mean, I guess that's the thing that probably is intriguing to, I'm sure, a lot of people, certainly to me, because I think you sort of imagine, don't you, when people have this prototype stuff or pre-production stuff, that it's in glass cases or kind of like a sort of museum almost, you know. And I'm sure some of it is just, lying around people's houses. I'm not saying this is how it is with you, Raz, but, just as normal toys almost.
Yeah, well, especially if you work there, it's your job that you've taken home.
Right.
And
you handed it to the kids.
Yeah, I'll take this home for the weekend, Clive, and you can work on it, or give it to the kids, let them play with it, see what they think of it. And then it just goes in a box, which is honestly what happens 99% of the time, and it just becomes an estate sale and so on. But no, not now. It's all, displayed as space allows. But yeah, it's the
property of Haringey Council.
Like you hear a lot of this stuff is thrown out. This is where a lot of this stuff is found by people that go dumpster diving and frightening.
To go back to what you were saying about the next step from a painted resin prototype, painted hard copy, what comes after that? You mentioned first shot.
Yeah, so first shots are when the steel mold has been created and it's the very first run. EP1, first shot, T1. It's the very first kind of rough ever plastic toy to be made in the history of that particular piece. And from a design point of view, again, we spoke about feedback. You're going to get them back and have notes on either the color or the the mold or something isn't quite right, or it might be perfect first time, but no, I guarantee that never happened. A great point to just kind of keep in mind is that you're not only working with just one side of things. This is an animation show. So the animators, the toy makers have to adhere to kind of animation Bibles, sketches, paint schemes, all of that, or vice versa. So there's a lot of kind of people with opinions high up that you have to kind of cater to when making anything like that. Again, if you just think about it like a normal business or anything in that sort of realm of entertainment. So a good example of this is, we might as well just go for the pink hot rod. He was.
Yeah. We've never spoke about that on this show before.
No,
what was it?
Pink who?
That's why I'm bringing it up now, because I think there is a disgusting lack of mention of the pink hot rod.
Yeah,
we've always had that.
We've really slept on it, I can tell you.
You have, honestly, and I think it's time the fans got what they want.
They've been writing letters. We've got whole mailbags full.
Yeah, rightly so.
It's, just in Liam's spare room.
Yeah.
Well,
His tip.
he wrote half of them, so it's a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got bags full of something anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just me going, make pink hot rod. Get it made.
You've got a pink hot rod.
I think so.
Yes.
In a way, though, Pink Hot Rod is sort of the poster boy for this whole discussion, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because
I guess so.
I think that's his function on the box, isn't it? Poster boy.
Yeah, poster,
Yeah.
poster boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it will have been, I assume, for you as well, Raz, one of the pre-production prototypes, whatever you want to call it, that will have captured imagination even as a child. Like
Are
I
you
remember.
kidding me? Of course.
Yeah. Maz is holding up his new retro
There it
Pink
is.
Hot Rod. There it is.
I mean, they've made one.
Yeah, which is
pink
incredible.
version. Yeah,
Which
it's
is
great.
incredible. I mean, for me, I distinctly remember looking at the catalogue as a kid and thinking, hang on a minute, that looks different to the one that I have.
Yeah.
And that, even as a child, that set my imagination going as to like what the deal was here and whatever.
What's the
So-
difference? And you do sort of I don't know. I guess there are two camps. You sort of take the information that you're given and just go, well, obviously there was some kind of change along the way, or the colours didn't match. And this is as a kid, I'm saying, right? Not as an adult collector. Like Maz mentioned about why Unicron was mentioned. Oh, Arbalest, look, it's Unicron, right? And now, how do they know? It's because he's already infamous, and that's the story that they want you to believe. It's already a given, so you don't have to explain it necessarily to the audience. And I think that translated in the same way to toys. It's almost a given. You do question it, obviously, because you're like, well, why is this different?
Yeah.
But there is that sort of thing as a kid, for me, certainly, that sort of, well, something is different. It just is what it is. I like them each individually, but yeah, Pink Hot Rod is definitely one of them, because it Pink in the movie. And
So you, just for the benefit of doubt, because obviously people may not know, you have the Pink Hot Rod, don't you? That is in the catalogues.
I have a Pink Hot Rod which is in the catalogues in the 1986 pre-Toy Fair catalogue, the spring Toy Fair, the pre-Toy Fair. So there was a pre-Toy Fair, then a Toy Fair. One with the clear, which is the earlier one with the putty in between.
That you can see in the catalogue.
That you can see. There's two in the catalogue. There is two in the catalogue. Both have the putty in the arm to keep it in the thing, and one was robot mode, one was for vehicle mode, and mine, the stickers on the legs are handmade and they're very thick. It's like a hand. It's a printed, not professionally printed on a large scale. It's a small printed sort of glitter sticker that's been hand colored and with a thick layer of acetate glued on, so that if I'm sort of being demonstrative on webcam now, but for those listening, the thick piece of acetate blocks the legs from going all the way up. So that one we know was for robot mode. There is another one out there that has been found that is for the car mode, the vehicle mode. And then additionally, I have the blue canopy one, which is used for photography on the top of the box.
Well, that is the thing. And, when you were talking about it as a kid earlier, and, obviously we've talked about the catalogues as well, but that's sort of the real thing with a lot of this, isn't it? Is that you would have seen pictures of some of this stuff that you now own.
Right.
As a child, we all would have done. Yeah,
it's part of all of our lives. It's part of the lives of every single child and adult who owned a G1 Hot Rod.
Yeah.
That was the one that they looked at, and it's in all these homes. It was in millions and millions of homes, and now the actual one is in a collection and is known and is seen. That still blows my mind. That I try to explain that to like my wife and my daughter and my friends. Like, this is the one.
Yeah, right. It's so significant, and that's the allure of it, And I think that's this is. I touched on it earlier when I said this is the one that made every single one in every home, and that's very true. It is that, and. It's a hugely, hugely significant piece, and that design, why that is doubly interesting, is that design got past the hard copy stage and actually got to the injection molded plastic, and it was only later changed from pink. I can only assume why. I don't really know. The color palette of the 80s was pinks, it was purples. There are certainly other toys that have pinks and purples.
88, full of it.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the connotations of the sort of pinks are if you look at it from a business standpoint, this was marketed. Obviously, there are plenty of female fans. It's it's as much a female as it is a male. But in the 80s, as a kid, predominantly they are marketing towards boys, and
it was called the Hasbro Boys Toys Division.
It's the Hasbro Boys Toys Division. There was a girls' toy division that had plenty of pink. And I think for the main character, the main protagonist of the movie, the young guy, I can only guess that it probably crossed lines with Barbie in terms of the color palette. That's the only thing I can think of. Now, that's again from a business point of view, because everybody on this podcast and probably everybody on the planet would have been like, no, we would have taken the pink one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because it's amazing, you know.
Yeah.
But from that business point of view and crossing a line with a product that they had, you know, on the other side of the tracks in girls' toys, it was probably too similar. It probably wasn't even a gender thing, you know. It was just too similar of a product to what they were marketing towards the girls' toys. So,
but I mean, this continued in Hot Rod's history of reissues. I mean,
yeah.
We've had designers go on other people's shows and say that, you know, that they wanted it pink, but were told no, even in a reissue phase, you know, even in the era of nostalgia.
Yeah, and it is the era of nostalgia, you know, and I do think that there is oftentimes a sort of predilection to sort of talk down to children, adults talking down to children, and make no mistake, kids, because we all were one, are more intelligent than you can possibly fathom. And the color pink makes absolutely no difference to anyone's world other than, well, I prefer it, or I prefer the red, or I prefer the blue. It's just what you want. There's no sort of, you only analyze it after the fact to try and fit square pegs into round holes. But that is what I'm presuming happened with Hot Rod. It could be nothing to do with that. It could have been the pigment was too expensive. Who knows?
So at what point did the pink get changed to what we now see on vintage G1 Hot Rod production?
That would have been, and this is a guess, I would say EP 2 or 3. So it's the second or third run after the notes came back and design changes were made. The pigment was changed from that sort of very sort of hot pink to the red.
And by that time, would the stickers have still been handmade, or would they have been machine made by that point?
No. So when you sort of pass out these responsibilities, they, from my understanding on this toy line, it's different departments. So accessories are a different department, but in those earlier stages, you know, you all make something, you try and create something, and it comes together to make this handmade piece, right? And then you sort of pass out the responsibilities, and there are different departments. So I think no, the stickers ended at first shot, the handmade stickers.
And then after these engineering pilots comes what, like a release candidate, and then final production?
Essentially, yeah. So you've got an FEP, final engineering pilot, production sample, and they'll be bagged. My experience is, depending on the toy, again, it's not uniform. Some come with accessories, some do not come with accessories, and then they are for review, and then it's packaging, which is a different department, and then it's packaged together. Then you've got a quality control sample, which then was white tags, and now is green tags.
The famous Hasbro tags.
Yeah. So you've got the reason for the check, who signed off on it, and if there are any changes to be made, it'll be annotated on the card, which is, you know, why if you do have a green tag or white tag or whatever tag it is that you've got notes on it, well, then you know that that's not the final product, because the notes would then have to be sent back for review, from review to be changed, and then you'd get the final quality control samples. Then it's release time, and even then you're not safe, because let's look at the G2 Stunticons Protectobots and Hero, Megatron, Prime in blue. You know, they were ready to roll. In fact, they were for sale in the Hasbro employee store.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much stuff in G2, isn't there, that was carded, boxed up, ready,
Yeah.
and just pulled at the last minute.
All of 95.
Yeah.
Pretty much that kind of that line, which is why it's so notorious, so infamous, is you've got a real, I mean, talk about an amazing class of 95. You've got the G2 Stunticons all carded bar the leaders, which would have been in their own case, the protector bots all carded again apart from the leaders.
So hang
ATB
on.
Megatron.
You were saying that these were for sale in the Hasbro employee store. Does that mean the leaders would have had packaging as well, like Motormaster and Hotspot?
Well, this is the yes, they would have done, because the artwork was created.
Yeah,
how
we've seen it,
how far it got, I don't know. Only because nothing has ever been found. Again, if it wasn't written down, it didn't happen. But that's kind of a rule of thumb. But it's one you take with a pinch of salt. We've seen the artwork. We've seen their peers be packaged. We've seen case assortment numbers. They were ready to roll, but we haven't seen any actual proofs.
As you could tomorrow. Someone could turn up tomorrow with a packaged complete set of 5 and be like, I've had these since 1995.
Just sat in the loft.
Yeah, absolutely. And an Abominus, G1 Abominus gift set, and a G1 Brutigus gift set, because G1 Defensor in the sort of the pricing guide from Hasbro, with the product codes and everything that the Hartmans were sent years ago by Hasbro when they were sort of formulating list of every variant in their entire product list. Defensor was not available, not applicable. Said NA next to the product code, next to the. So there was a stage where that wasn't going to be released, and yet it was.
Mm-hmm. And it's very tough.
And it's very tough.
US
Could that be a
Defensor.
reason?
If you were to take an average guess, and still sticking with Hot Rod, how many prototypes would you say, how many clear prototype stages has a toy like that gone through? If you had to have a number of, let's not even count the hard copy, let's just say of plastic versions before release, how many would, for example, Hot Rod have had? Or a Hot Rod or a Cyclonus or a Springer?
Well, Hot Rod, Cyclonus, and Springer may have had different issues. This is the thing. Like, you can say, if all goes well, you've got a first shot, EP 1, 2, 3. And then on the 4th try, that's the sample that gets made.
Right.
That's on a good day. Broadside, I have an EP3 which is the 3rd run of those engineering pilots after, the drastic changes that took place from the hard copy that we see in the US 85 catalogues, where it looks completely different, totally different. That's the hard copy. So they had to totally retool that design and so on and so forth. I don't know how far that got. But even in the EP3 stage, which I have, the plane and aircraft carrier mode, the tip of that and the nose cone do not clear the face.
Right.
So it's a simple thing of tolerances in terms of engineering. So what they had to do thereafter was just give a bit more clearance from the nose cone, from the face, because it would just rub on the nose and you could barely close it. So that's an additional thing that you need to send back. So then that means there undoubtedly would have been an EP4.
So you've got a note on that toy that says EP3. You've got something scribbled on it on a tag or something.
Yeah, it's written. It's on wrapped in bubble wrap and has EP3 in a green marker written on it.
That's amazing.
And it doesn't. I have 2 of those. One is loose. One is sealed, and so I know that the loose one is an EP3 and has no clearance from the nose.
I guess at that stage you can see, assuming that you have, a retail release broadside as well, you can see the physical difference between the 2 of them, I'm assuming.
Yes, you can. You can feel it. You can. I mean, there are other differences, and there are with Springer as well. Springer's a really good one. So all of these, I was fortunate enough to find examples of Retgar, Springer, Cup, Hot Rod.
Sandstorm as well?
Sandstorm, Defensor, all these 86 guys, and they all have minor issues that still need to be fixed. and they're all the latest of all of them is EP3. So that's kind of what I'm going on, because again, I'm going on experience based on what I've been able to amass, what I've been able to see. Because you can't talk to. I've found people that used to work at the company to ask questions, and they can't remember those specifics. So you've got to kind of piece it together, and there's a lot of guesstimation involved. So I'm saying this now, tomorrow something could come up and that fills in a blank that I'm like, okay, well then I was wrong about this previous stuff.
Hard to be definitive, I guess.
It is. It's really hard to be definitive.
Do you think that's kind of what turns off some people to collecting it? Because we have this kind of innate need to complete collections, and someone who goes for a collection of prototypes knows that they can never know what that looks like.
I think it could be, but I've never met anyone that was sort of discouraged by that, because everyone sort of ultimately looks for at least one crown jewel for their collection, because the crown jewel is a term often bandied about by collectors, and you've all got one, whatever that may be, you've all got one. It's almost supply and demand, and you want something that no one else has got, right? And then you feel sort of special about it, and I'm the only one experiencing this particular sandstorm mold, and this is the crown jewel of my collection, if I am a sandstorm collector or a movie collector or a Transformers collector or whatever. So I haven't experienced people being put off by that. There are just new collectors, and older collectors get out of it, and newer collectors go to the basics of Optimus Prime and Megatron, and maybe in several years when they've exhausted those possibilities, something exotic comes along and that's what they fancy. I don't know. But in terms of completists, you can never complete this.
Do you think there's more interest maybe in terms of pre-production stuff of items that never made it to retail, as opposed to, because you're obviously, you've given examples like Springer and Retgar and things like that, but those toys exist as well. So I mean, purely from my own perspective, and I'm saying this purely personally, I would be more drawn, if such a thing existed, like to the prototype of RC, for example, because it's not something that I can get, the retail version of. And, like Unicron is obviously the kind of ultimate in many people's minds, because it's something we all know about. We've seen pictures of it, and yet none of us, apart from yourself, have it in a cupboard in our house, and
we'll never get to experience it, will we? That's the difference,
exactly.
isn't it? It's what you haven't experienced.
And I think there is probably, certainly in my mind, I think all of it is fascinating, don't get me wrong, but there's kind of a layer of fascination of, like, this is an early version of a toy that we all know, versus this is something that you've never actually physically seen, and
I think that I do agree with you, and I think I agree with you to a point, and I'll give a couple of explanations. With that again is why the G2 line is just held in such a high place amongst collectors, because it's an entire line that was never released, but within that line there are mock-ups that weren't released into plastic production. M.A.S.K, you had a few, like the
Mirage,
Sideswipe,
Sideswipe, the Sandstorm, although that did make it to plastic test shot stage.
But we didn't know that at the time, though,
no,
did
that's
we?
true. It was more recent discovery that and the Black Death Star Scream had made it to plastic test shot. And they were far less interesting looking. Yeah, they were far less interesting looking as well at that point.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I think there is that draw that, the RC that you talked about, and which would be currently of the pieces that I do not currently own would be number one.
Do you have a horse jet, Raz?
No, I don't.
No. Man, horse jet. That is one I would like to own.
Yeah. I have a pretty strong feeling as to who does own that.
So someone owns it.
Drop Shot.
Yeah, Drop Shot is its official name.
Horse jet.
In these, we like to call it horse
jet.
jet.
Yeah.
We named it in a chat a few years back as horse jet. I can't even remember where it came from.
Galvatron. Who is that new Decepticon?
Horse jet.
Was it a Decepticon? Was horse jet a Decepticon?
I don't know. We're making our own narrative now.
But someone owns it.
I think so. I've never
I
seen
like
it
the
at
idea that
Takara
someone does.
shows. Yeah, I like to think that someone owns it.
Yeah.
And pretty good idea as to who that may be. But I don't know. The one thing I will say, Sixo, is that the differences of a released piece can be so stark that it's almost unrecognizable.
Yeah.
And I would say the Grey Astro Train fits that bill.
That's number
entirely.
one. Really,
That's a fair. Yeah.
Entirely. That is almost an unreleased piece, and it's something that no one's ever sort of had in. Obviously there was an e-hobby version, but all these versions aren't. That, and the broadside, that would be my number 2 of pieces that I don't
broadside.
own.
Well, I think
my goodness,
particularly because that was the character model that we saw then in some of the cartoon, not all, but also in the comic as well. I mean, I remember I was a big Marvel comic fan growing up, and then seeing that toy in the catalogue,
and
then owning the toy and being like, hang on a minute, what's happening here then?
Why is that totally different?
Bonkers.
And it just, but is the grass always greener though? That's what you think.
Yeah, true.
I don't know. I don't know. I do feel like it would be in those cases, if I'm perfectly honest with you. From a design point of view, I never liked as a kid, obviously now it's very different, but as a kid, Astro Train's legs had sort of toes at the bottom. I actually had a classics that when I was a kid, I cut those off because I just liked it flush, which the prototype has flush legs. There's no toes on it, because when you're in train mode, you're like, well, what's that? In rocket mode.
Yeah. That's the immersion break.
Sure.
Him.
That's what it is. Yeah, exactly.
Let's not talk about Octane.
Oi.
Well, Octane started having a pivot.
Yeah.
Right. Being an articulated lorry.
An absolute articulated
That
lorry.
fascinated me.
Cost.
As you're, well, you can see it. And as you're coming up with some of these examples, I must admit they're all ones that really still ring as super fascinating in my brain.
Yeah. And then you get you get to G2, and it's like, wow, this is an entire line.
So I have a question then about G2 specifically, because, and I think it's easy to piece together lots of G2, and I've written about it a few times because I also think it's a hugely fascinating part, and I think because of the rarities and the non-release stuff, it almost makes the line as a whole more interesting because of what we didn't get. Yeah. And I think because you can piece together, so bits like some of the pieces that M.A.S. had, like the sideswipe, the yellow sideswipe, and then we've seen the artwork, so we know that there was the painted mock-up of it, but we know that what the artwork, so we know what the finished toy would have looked like as well. So you can sort of piece it together very easily from those bits. But then there's things like Tiger Stripe Grimlock, which is one that we've only ever seen as artwork, but I'm guessing there will have been a painted piece or something at some point, right? Like that's fair to assume that did exist or does exist.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay.
If the others did, that did.
So there's an orange jazz out there as well then?
Well, not only that, but in talking with a long-time collector in, I would say, 2003 or 2, this is years before any of this was discovered. And this is like an OG collector. He was like, yeah, no, I've been shown some weird things over the years. I've been shown
that's been a lot of people's experience in this hobby back in the day. To be completely frank.
right, and it's. I think
you have to be more specific.
Weird things.
Yeah.
And he said, I've seen a blue and green swoop. I've seen an orange sludge.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a third, but I clearly remember, and this was on the phone, a phone conversation with him. He said, I've seen a blue and green swoop, and I've seen an orange and red, or he said orange sludge. And I thought, when I'd seen this artwork, I thought, well, this artwork hasn't been seen before. So I harked back to that conversation several years before, and I thought, you've seen the mock-ups then, haven't you?
Fascinating. Yeah. So they are out there, we think, then. That's someone has them.
Someone has them. I honestly don't know anyone that does have them in their collection. Same with Sergeant Hound, and Carl Hartman is a huge sort of proponent to find those.
Right.
I mean, there are collectors who don't share their stuff. They're not online. They're very old school, and they collect purely for their own desire to own things. And it's only with the sad passing of people sometimes that these things come to light. There's an estate sale and all of a sudden there's a whole new influx of prototypes on the market. And,
sure, yeah, I do agree with that. And I think that would be less likely to be a collector and more likely to be
an ex-employee.
Yeah, I think so. Because when you get to do this for a longer time, even the hint of, well, this guy might have that, or this girl might have this piece, there's some kind of hint as to who's got what without even having seen it. So I think the likelihood is an ex-employee sale or the kid of someone that brought them home and said, play with this, and they don't know what it is, and it's painted and it says Sergeant Hand.
Yeah, that's always the thing that strikes me. Is
Right?
that actually a lot of this stuff may just be in someone's hands and they don't even know what it is.
In a little drawer somewhere, just in a box. Randomly.
Yeah.
Well, exactly that. I mean,
they haven't got a clue. Yeah?
There were things that came out a year and a half ago, and they have never been seen before in the hands of anyone, and yet all of a sudden somebody had them and they were for sale. And one of them was the swoop that you see on the G1 swoop box. It's got the gold beak, all the pointy parts, Diaclone gold parts, and it's painted red. And that had never been seen before in all nearly 40 years. Now it's been shown. I am going to flex because I can't often, but I have the grapple from the box, the boxed Diaclone grapple.
That's a hell of a flex.
And that's got a sticker on it that no other grapple has. And it was mocked up for Transformers grapple. And that was part of the same lot. There was a Transformer, no, it was a Beatras Beat Vadam, wasn't there? And that's the thing that never turns up. There was a Beat Vadam in that group of toys. There were Diaclone product samples, totally production, nothing different about them, but they were in that lot. So this person had stuff from Hasbro, and stuff like this had turned up after decades.
Are we going to sit here and just accept M.A.S. saying, I can't often flex in a conversation where
it's usually the same flex, isn't it, though? It's just the same thing.
But you've just said that you had all these like G2 prototypes and everything at once upon a time. You've got plenty of flex in you, man.
I'll just say, I'm trying so hard not to make a Van Damme joke every time you say Vadam. Taking all of the willpower I have.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Beat Claude.
Beat Nick Van
There's
Damme.
something in that.
Claude.
But look, when those G2 prototypes were on the market, they were on eBay. There were so many things. That lot was such a huge find that there are still things from that lot being sold by the same geezer today.
But isn't that sometimes the way that this stuff comes to light, that it just pops up on eBay? I mean, even now, there's stuff that just randomly crops up on eBay for sale, isn't it? And it's like, hang on a minute.
I found my biggest find ever on eBay.
Right.
It's time and place. I was meant to be, this is October 2005. And
it was the year 2005.
Sorry. I promised I wouldn't do that again.
I don't know. You guys have heard this story, I guess, but I was meant to be working, and one of the cast members was unfortunately just sort of not very well, so we postponed for a couple of days, and I came home, which I wasn't meant to do, and I thought, I got home quite late. I thought, I'll just check eBay.
As you do.
Wake up in the middle of the night, need a pee.
No, that's
check eBay.
well, listen, you're in it to win it.
Yeah.
Believe me. Believe me, you've got to put the work in. Anyone listening?
He never switches off. He never turns off.
No, sorry, no. It's on. It was, and at this point, I was refreshing once every sort of 4 minutes. There's no joke. So I got this. This was about 2 in the morning. I might have even been talking to you, Maz. To be perfectly honest, it is as was our sort of nightly ritual.
Just MSN Messenger, right?
MSN Messenger, just talking absolute nonsense. And I'm refreshing, and a lot on eBay says Transformers 61 Skylinks. I remember this so clearly. It just said Transformers 61 Skylinks, and it was, you see the thumbnail, and there were clearly more than 61 Transformers. As I found out, I guess the person meant G1.
Yeah, I don't want to forget to, but yeah.
So I click on this, and I'm seeing a large lot of like 300 toys. I'm like, okay, let's have a look. That's weird. The blaster looks a bit different. It seems to have a gold chest. Huh. Okay, I'm going to zoom in there. Yeah, no, that's a sticker on the... Okay, right. Oh, hang on a minute. Next picture. Wow, that's That is a GT Motormaster.
Brilliant.
I can't even imagine.
And oh my goodness, that is the thrusts. And at this point, and it was the day before, and I'm not joking, the day before, I had emailed someone at eHobby to see if they knew anyone with the original Astra Train, because it's been my top 3 grails forever. And I thought, wait a minute, that's the backside of the G1 Astro Train hard copy from the catalogue. Are you kidding me? And I look around and it's boom, it's bing bang zoom gangbusters, everything. So immediately everything in this lot is a prototype. Absolutely everything. It's
300
around 250, 280, something like, including like individual accessories and stuff. So I get in contact with them. I said, I'm interested in the lot. It literally just been listed. I got their phone number. I called them up immediately. This was about 2 a.m. And I was just, doing the whole...
Were they in the UK or were they...
No, they were in the US.
Right,
they were in the US. 2 women who had taken over an estate sale.
Right.
One of these, I guess it was like a lockup, storage wars type thing. I don't really know. And I bought it from them and worked out about $4 a piece.
No.
Maz's face right now.
Maz's face is a picture. He's
Right.
going to throw up.
Right time, right. But he already he's heard the story about 1,000 times.
And this is still his face.
I've never heard him stay silent for this long.
I wish I'd never given you that wing.
I'm telling you. I don't know
I
why
wish
you
I'd
did.
let it be recycled.
I don't. Yeah. I think you put it in the recycling and then felt guilty for the history of the...
She called me and said, "You sure you want me to throw this out?"
Just get rid of it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Just on the phone, like, no.
So can we clarify what we're saying here then? That the grey Astra Train prototype that is in the catalogues that we all lusted after as kids, and still to this day people share pictures of on the internet, got for how much?
$4.
Oh my God.
And
was that before or after shipping?
Yeah, right.
No, I tried to get a discount. I'm a collector. I'm not mad.
Haggled. Amazing.
Talking about. I'm not made of money. Goodness. But it's that right time, right place. And if I hadn't have done that and this and that, but everyone says about it's the work that you put into it. It's not just.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure it's easy to hear that story and think, oh my God, how lucky. But equally, there is an element of luck to it because
large.
You've got to be online at the right time. And I've said this before, I know, and we've talked about it. I mean, certainly, I don't collect prototypes, but I've had that thing where you, as you said, you put the work in and you refresh eBay daily. And then on the one day that you're like, I'll leave it today. The thing that you wanted crops up and you're like,
honestly, anyone that put the works in deserves that. And this episode is about sort of prototypes and the discussions they're in. But I can't have this conversation without Maz's Justra Lancia story.
Oh, the wheeljack, they've had the pillow. They've had the pillow story.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we know the pillow. Yeah.
Classic triple takeover pillow talk. That.
And how many have been found so far?
Just the one.
Sure, exactly. So you want to sit there with that face, and you're like, I lucked into it.
I didn't pay $4, though, did I?
Yeah, but it wasn't far off, though, was it?
Mister, I don't get to flex very often.
Yeah, I don't get to flex, but how much? It was not far off. It was like, was it €100 or something?
It was a fair deal more than that, but it was worth it. It was probably at the time, you would think, the number of people who would have paid it was significant, but there's still a whole load of people who simply wouldn't have gone to that price at the time.
Well, a more fool them.
Yeah, it's funny because the lot that you are describing, it's almost more likely that you'll get that for a bargainous price than for the market value. It seems it's more nowadays that stuff. It's just permeated through the communities of toys, and you've got to know what you're looking at as well. I mean, like you might have looked at that lot as someone who didn't spend their lifetime looking at variants and gone, most of those are in pants condition and aren't complete. Pass. That's a lot of money.
I'm telling you, it was a very pixelated 3-4 pictures. This wasn't a glaringly obvious thing. I sat there for, I zoomed in, I did the whole thing. And if you don't know what you're looking for, there's no way that you would have, picked out the certainly the starting point was, I remember that blaster, and it was a very pixelated picture of his chest sticker.
Did it ever cross your mind that maybe these are all just customized, like maybe the owner just painted them all or something like that?
No, because when you sort of put two and two together, and like I said to begin with, provenance is a huge part of this, and they told me that it was an estate sale, a lock-up, storage wars type thing.
Does it sort of stand to reason that, or seem likely that it would come in lots like that, though? I'm sure not everything does, of course, but if one person has one thing from a source, that they might have more as well, and that if it's going to go, it might go as a job lot.
Yeah, most of them have been job lots to begin with. It's only sort of passed out when it gets to the collector level, and that's when the price sort of increases.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, I've had a lot of help from people in this community, and you talk about that the beat Van Damme that happened. The
forever known as that now.
Yeah, exactly. The person that had that find really, really did me a solid.
It was a diamond. It's almost like, thank goodness it went to someone who actually then just thought, I want these to go to certain people. He did not chase the highest top dollar at all. He gave some away for free.
He gave them, for free. So I have to give a huge shout out to him.
You know who you are, buddy. You're absolute diamond.
Yeah, I don't know. Do we say names? But...
Well, not in this case, but he does listen.
No,
so
he well, if he listens, he knows.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've done us some real solids there.
Thanks, B.M.A.K. No,
yeah.
It wasn't B.M.A.K.
It was Steven Seagal.
Thank you, Steven Seagal.
All right, listen. I'm thinking of the possibilities that stuff will just end up getting thrown away. Maybe it doesn't go to a yard sale. Maybe it doesn't get bought as an estate lot by someone who then cashes in on it to some degree, and then it ends up in collectors' hands. Maybe it just gets destroyed, and these things are lost to time. Is that a good argument when people say to you that thing, this belongs in a museum and it shouldn't be in a single person's collection? This belongs to the whole community and the fandom. Why should one person own it? Do you use that argument that actually, no, for the most part, I've rescued some of this stuff? Or how do you counter that if someone says this belongs in a museum?
Well, I if someone says that, I'd take it as a compliment, as in the pieces are, not that they don't think I'm worthy of owning it as a collector.
Well, I don't think they believe any collector is worthy of owning it. It's more like it doesn't belong to
so
collectors.
It transcends collectors.
Right.
Well, yeah, I don't pay any attention to that because it's not... Who are they to say that then? No, I think this is a collector's... I'm a collector. I'm not doing this for absolutely everybody else. That's a ridiculous thing to do as a collector. I think you do it for yourself. You don't collect pieces just because other people like them, do you? So transversely, you shouldn't feel any sort of obligation to them. What you should feel an obligation to is the piece and the history of it. And if you do that justice by sort of sharing it in the proper way without it being copied or scanned or all this kind of stuff, and maintain the integrity of the piece, I think collecting, even though there is such a wonderful community in the world and we help each other, or we try to, it is an individualistic hobby in many respects. Like I can see your collections in the background. Have you collected that piece for me?
I have to admit that there are things I have bought because I have been influenced. And there are things
but
I've
that's different,
bought for this podcast, to be honest, or things I've bought to take photos of because I knew I'd be able to do a photo of it where no one else has and stuff like that. So to some degree, sometimes.
Yeah, but that's because you're influenced by it and you're intrigued by it. You don't buy it and then want to give it to... No, you know what I mean. Okay, fine. You might want to give it to someone as a gift, but you don't do it solely for that. You do it for you to begin with. If your interest has been piqued by someone else, let's say someone hears this podcast and goes, you know what? I'm actually really interested in movie toys now, so I'm going to go and buy movie toys. They're buying it for them still. They're not buying it for you.
Of course, yeah. I mean, this is an argument I've had with people. I'm asking you as devil's advocate. I'm not asking you as a person who needs this answered, because I'm not someone who scans the stuff that I have that's rare for public consumption. I'll write about it.
Yeah.
I'll photograph it in a way that doesn't allow it to be reproduced. So the information is there. People are aware of it. They learn about it and they know. But I don't want to create scans of a quality of my rare packaging so that people can create reproductions.
No.
Yes, it's quite selfish, because you think to yourself, I've dedicated hours and months and years of my life. I've made sacrifices to find and own that, and then it cost me a lot. I do wish it to remain special and unique. And maybe tomorrow another one will pop up, but that's out of my control. And I'm not going to buy it to still be the only one to own it. So to some degree, I can completely side with not making everything immediately accessible, but I do like to share its existence. I don't think there's anything I have or have ever owned that I've never told anyone about.
To answer your question, I don't seek out to do that with anybody else other than myself as a sole collector in mind. If somebody asks me that question after the fact, then you can take it one of two ways. You can either agree with them or disagree with them. Me personally, to answer your initial question, I don't give it any thought other than I absolutely love this piece. I don't feel like it's not like a right. It's not that far. It's not anything. It's just, I love this piece. Can I afford it? What's the asking price? Is the seller trustworthy? Do I know them? What's the provenance? I don't give it any more thought than that. And I don't think anyone should, because it's not their place to say any more than it is my place to say.
It's not a communal hobby in that sense at the end of the day.
Not in that sense.
Yeah.
We help each other, and like M.A.S.K gave me the wing, and the coma car, whatever. We do each other, but that's because we like each other. We don't feel obligated to do it. We've been friends for over 20 years. It's just, No,
I mean, if it was about obligation and deserved, you would have handed me that ball lion juicer you have, which is in so much better condition than mine
exactly.
a long time
and
ago.
It's not about that, because we're all selfish. At the end of the day, there is a part of us, but you understand that, and there's that smile between us. Obviously, there's competitiveness, and I've been enraged by people, but it's only because I want the piece. It's not like it's not like I think I deserve the piece. It's just I want it. It's I'm a collector, and as a collector, you want to collect the pieces that are hard to get, and there is competition there, and
I can understand that. You should hear some of the things M.A.S. has called me over the years.
Just the same thing. No, just the same thing.
Just
over
one
and over.
word.
Yeah,
one word repeatedly that can't be broadcast.
It's not told you to choke on it yet. It's been a while since.
Oh no, I've been told to choke on many things.
I was going to say, is it your real name then?
No, it's not. But no, I've been told to choke on many things by M.A.S. over the years. I think often in a hope that if I did actually croak it, that he might get said item.
But,
No, hang on. Apparently, I'm
is
already
it a countdown?
No, I've been banned from owning that.
You really shouldn't be allowed. Do the listeners know about that?
Those who are our patrons know about it.
Okay, so that's
the Micromaster bases and stations.
You've got to pay for that. Yeah,
someone definitely had to pay for it.
Yeah.
Keep my mouth shut in that case.
Well, one thing I really wanted to ask about, and it's something that I kind of know the answer to already, but I'd like other people who maybe don't see it the same way as we do to know, is why you would collect prototypes. Because not all of them are super different. Not all of them have massive quirks that the release did. Not all of them are famous. I know some people collect prototypes because in some cases, it's like another variant of a production toy. So it adds to their list of variants. I mean, there's a Diaclone black hoist head out there that a friend of mine owns, and he's put it with a black hoist body, and as a result he has a black hoist, and it looks amazing in his group of Diaclone cars because it's one color that never got released. But in the case of prototypes where they are very, very similar to production, like the broadside you were talking about, like if it was one engineering pilot before release and the only thing that makes it different is it's actually not as good as the final version, something doesn't work on it, why would someone then potentially pay more and work harder to own that as opposed to production when the differences are very hard to see and you just in your mind, it's a prototype? What's What's the significance and why?
That's easy to explain if you look at absolutely everything else on the planet in terms of consumer goods. Why are you paying $4,000 for a white T-shirt with a red logo that says Supreme on it in a slightly different way to another? It's because the other person can't have it. It's exclusivity. This is the history of the pieces. So if you love this toy line, if you love this franchise, you are owning a piece that no one else will own. And I have to say that G1 prototypes, like actual G1 prototypes, are so few and far between. There are probably 10 collectors that have one. The second highest number of G1 prototypes in any collection is probably about 35 or 40.
Wow.
I mean, that's limited.
Yeah.
And people want that exclusivity. But that's in general. More specifically, it's the history of it. So the broadside that we were talking about earlier, it doesn't function as well as the production toy, but therein lies its desirability, because it doesn't work as well as the production toy. That is more desirable because no one else is going to have it. And it's a stage of the production that will never be repeated, has never been repeated since then, because they'd fixed that.
It's a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's peeking behind the curtain.
It's a work
in
really progress,
That's
isn't it?
exactly it. Yeah, and again, you can't go back on that. There might be other issues that you have with different factories with reissues, but that won't come up again because that's already been fixed. So to have it from 1986 that was never in a shop, had only been in the hands of the small factory run that produced it, and when it was sent back to research and development, like, that's it, So having that special piece in your collection that maybe only I know I have the Facebook page, but I collect for me. I don't really like to flaunt things, and that's just a personal thing, because a lot of people do, and that's equally as wonderful. But I collect for me, and I like the demure. I like the wolf in sheep's clothing as much as I do like sharing some pieces with everybody. I think that's what it is. It's just that special. It takes me back to that first time I went to a show and I saw it was Off-World that had some G2 protos, and funny enough, Paul had a G1 script.
Yeah.
Now, there's loads of other pieces there, some really rare stuff, but there's only one script there. There's only one G2 Grimlock or G2 Slag. And you think, that's the piece that I want to walk home with.
Honestly, though, I think it's more than that. And I think it's been more than that in your case, too. For example, that lot that we were just talking about with the Swoop and the Beat Van Dam, there was production toys in that lot. And they are 100% production. They are indistinguishable from the one on the shelf. But I know I was drawn to them because it
the history
came
of them.
Yes, exactly.
It came from the person.
Right. I know that one is the sample that was in the hands of the execs and the designers, and they were like, yep, let's release this. Or this is the one that we're examining this piece and thinking we could make this for Transformers. We'll just change the deco. So, for example, Police Sideswipe I have, Clampdown. That is a production Clampdown, 100%.
There you go.
But I
you
know...
put that on eBay without production Clampdown, who else is going to know?
Right. You'd never
So you're
know.
collecting for you.
Yes. It's indistinguishable from
It's for
another
me.
one. Yeah.
I know that this piece, so we go back to an earlier thing of provenance.
Yep.
It's the provenance. It's this is for me. I'm collecting this because I absolutely adore this piece of history.
Yeah. So the uniqueness of it isn't tangible. You know what I mean?
No.
It's not something you can identify and point to and
magic.
prove in a way. Yeah.
It's the magic
just
that's
knowing.
inherent
It
to it.
is. It is. Well, let me ask you guys something before we go on. What would be the pieces that you would want that not necessarily have been that haven't necessarily been found?
Oh, that haven't been found.
Well, not necessarily. What would
Scourge, just looking for a good time. That one. The one on the box with the sideways waist
there
belt
you go.
buckle
Right.
and the
With
boots.
the thick beard.
Yeah, it looks like the boxed one. It looks like the artwork that has never looked like the toy.
Yeah.
But because
Yeah.
it looks like the prototype.
It's a badass. That's for sure.
Never
on
been
my
found,
list.
right?
Yeah, no. I actually only know of one scourge that has ever been found, and I own it, and it's a pre-production sample, and it's not early, so I have never seen an early scourge.
That's mad.
So,
like, why?
Yeah.
Never seen an early scourge.
There's been loads of Cyclonuses. I've had a Cyclonus with no paint, and
I mean, there's been 4. When you say loads, there's been 4.
well, relatively, that's like nearly the whole run.
So many.
But I don't know. What do you guys think? Maybe something that hasn't necessarily been found.
All right.
In any generation, by the way.
Ooh, any generation, cripes.
Any generation.
I genuinely don't know.
I think for me, it would probably still be something from G1 or maybe G2.
Yeah.
Just it would be G1 or 2, just because I think there is some of this is still so tied to childhood in a way. And although I do collect stuff from Beast Wars, Unicron trilogy, and beyond, not all of it, as some people say, but there's it's a very specific window. But that stuff, I enjoy the retail side of it, but I wouldn't be as interested. Like, you see pictures of Unicron trilogy prototypes and stuff sometimes, and there is still an interest there, but not enough for me to kind of to broach that, if you like, as a kind of.
What about Beast Wars Neo Unicron?
Yeah, that definitely. Yeah, that is an interest, but still,
I mean, that's
oh, for sure, that's up there, but still not as much as G1 Unicron. To put it comparatively.
Right.
So, I mean, in terms of known stuff, there's no doubt in my mind that Unicron G1 is the one.
It's the one.
It's the one for sure.
RC would be the number, sort of, in terms of unreleased. I would love to get that RC prototype.
There's no information of that, is there? Of
no,
where it is, or
nor how far it got in terms of. Obviously, we have that 87 sketch of Chrome Dome, but nothing's tangible.
Well, there's the one blurry picture of RC, isn't there? The kind of. I don't even really know what it is. It's just a prototype. That's all we really know.
Yeah, well, that would have been the looks like. So you've got a non-transforming female RC robot and the non-transforming car. But how far that got? Were they ever amalgamated into a works like?
Yeah.
That has the mechanism, and how did that transform? We don't know how far it got.
Yeah, that fascinates me, because I think, just imagine if, like, tomorrow the works like prototype of RC popped up, and it was like, oh, okay, so this is actually then how it was going to transform. And
I'm mortgaging my house. I'm telling you,
right?
Who wouldn't want to know what? But I mean, would you transform it if you got it?
Yeah. Oh my God,
I like to hear that.
Same.
I like to hear that.
Oh my God, no! Don't hear it. Just pray for me.
What about you, Liam?
I don't know. Honestly, like, I don't know. I always think of the main things, like the hot rod, the ashtray, all the things that we know about. It's all the stuff like we were talking about.
Pretty good answers.
Yeah, but there are other things that that really stood out. That became so like iconic almost, didn't they? Beyond that, I don't know. It's like the pink hot rod is so special, and so is the ashtray. But then everything behind that, it's all the stuff like the blue streak, which is the Diaclone one. Like, like that is a holy grail of mine anyway. So I'd just love to see a Transformers version of that.
Well, there is one out there. 100%. I own the prowl of that catalogue with that sticker, the hand cut sticker. So
there would be like a Diaclone production version with,
for sure, with
what's photographed effectively.
Yeah,
that's
what's photographed.
So blue streak with an Autobot.
That's basically it. Just to see that, that official thing, just for 1 moment. Just there it was. That version of that toy.
And that is that is one of the biggest most legendary pieces of this entire lore, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But then also, I hope you don't mind me mentioning that you own this. You have the red Diaclone Tracks prototype.
Yeah.
So, and that comes in 3 versions, doesn't it? You've got like
all 3 of them. Yeah. So there's
stuff like that would be lovely to have. Like the very first Mirage would be amazing to have. And something like that, I think, would be magical to own.
This was a conversation on a Facebook group recently. Someone was saying, "Oh, this is not." I can't remember what it was. No, I'm sorry. It was a micro change cassette man, I think. And they were saying that no, this is. Someone said, "I'd love to have this prototype," and they said, "No, this is not a prototype. This is just art." And it's not. It's actually photo art. There is a real prototype that has been photographed there, that has then been printed. Well, I say developed and printed, and painted on to exactly the word, yeah, embellished, because why? They're trying to sell a product. If you take it purely from a financial standpoint and a business standpoint, and they're proud of this product, they want to touch up all the paint chips, because it's a resin that, you know, paint chips really easily. You've got to handle these things with care. Resin is very heavy, but it's a lot heavier than plastic, but it's very sort of fragile. So you've got to be very careful in the paint chips and so on and so forth. So they touch it up to embellish it and make it look as appealing as possible to the clients that and customer base that they want to sell it to. So all those things that you may think look like drawings, they were made into prototypes for sure.
Every single one?
I don't know about every single one. I some of them look so convincing. You think, well, did you do 99% of this? So yeah, maybe you can't say sort of definitively. I would love a yellow overdrive.
Oh yeah,
oh man, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, very nice. That's a good example, actually, of to kind of put it into context of the kind of thing that we're talking about. That sort of stuff that you randomly see pop up in a, you know, in a catalog or something somewhere, and it's like, what is that? Where did that exist?
Yeah, why is that different to mine?
Yeah,
you know?
We saw some pictures of the Diaclone Trailbreaker recently, didn't we? With the fold up flaps on the bonnet.
On the bonnet.
Yeah.
That was like a real WTF, you know. Like, where's
bloody crazy thing is, I've had a photo of that for 20 years and never
we were
noticed.
talking about that on the pod, weren't we?
Yeah, you did. You and I,
you've
forgotten more than you know, because we have
likely
spoken about that numerous times. That's
what, the Trailbreaker flap thing?
Yeah, for sure. We have spoken about
my
that.
memory.
And everyone was like, "Oh my god, I've never seen this before." And I thought, yeah, we've discussed this at length.
We're getting old, man. That's what it is. We're all getting old.
So just going back to talking about stuff that you mentioned about like things that have not been seen and that. I guess thinking back to my other thing then, Unicron being the one that is known, the one that isn't. I mean, I'd be fascinated to see if stuff like, you know, the fourth Decepticon Target Master, if there was ever like an actual prototype of that, for example, that kind of stuff that like nobody knows about.
Yeah, right.
I've only ever seen the one picture of it, which obviously you showcased at TF Nation, and you know, I presume I'm okay to mention that because it's obviously
no.
Not been...
I think that was Paul.
Yeah, it was your and Paul's panel.
Our panel. Yeah, we had a panel.
Yeah. Which was a fascinating panel.
Yeah, we had a panel, and he had that sort of unknown target master. So just for the people that are listening, Maz is holding up the concept board for it. The concept board
can't prove it.
Didn't necessarily have to have been, you know, that could have been debunked at that stage.
Yeah, it's so early. Everything on those concept. After all, that Manta Ray is on there as well. The Stingray headmaster is on there, and it wasn't even a headmaster.
Hold that up. Not that we can prove it one more time.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Disappeared.
May or may not be something there.
I can't see anything that is definitely not there.
Yeah, it's definitely not there. Who knows? I read a thing about a skyscraper transformer.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I have heard that before or somewhere.
I might have seen it in a movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful.
Was it big?
Yeah.
True.
The VHS tape is the one I want. The VHS
tape is also the one I want.
You know,
I'm sure people will listen to this will want to maybe kind of get a bit more flavour about you know, the things that you actually have in your home, as it were. You know, in your, is it Detolfs or what? I know you've got cabinets and things, glass cabinets, isn't it? That they're all kind of set up in.
Yeah, I found a really good deal from a company that no longer offers that really good deal. Back in, I had the IKEA, the Detolfs, and some sort of brown lateral shells, which is, I think, Maz, the last time you were at my house, we went on a boys lads holiday.
I was just telling these guys I'm still waiting to see the photos from Poxy Mallorca in 2006 or whatever it was.
Yeah,
it was a holiday I went on. I don't have the photos. It's on your camera somewhere, right?
I know, yeah, man. I need to.
Must develop those.
Yeah.
Get round to it.
I am that guy. Yeah, no. So I just found, like, you know, this incredible right time, right place company that was doing sort of wider glass display cabinets for things. So yeah, it's all in there.
I mean, this is maybe sort of a silly question, but it's just occurred to me because, like, one thing that's definitely real in my collection is that I organise it all nice, and then I think, oh bollocks, I've just ordered something else that's got to arrive or
Yeah.
whatever. You must get that as well, though, right? Where you have things set up very much for as it is, and I'm
Yeah.
guessing that you maybe don't get the sort of, I don't know, repeat influx of new stuff all the time.
No, he's not getting a box a day. I would
Right,
imagine,
exactly. Yeah.
this sort of thing.
No.
It must be fairly sporadic, at least, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's enough to warrant the unfortunate. I sort of, I collect prototypes as my sort of main focus, but I collect anything G1. I have a large sealed collection, the majority of which are sort of AFA graded. I have a large, probably the largest Kabaya collection. The watch collection, that's Watch Q, Microchange. I have I collect pre-Transformers, Microchange, Diaclone, Japanese G1, Mexican minis, Peruvian minis,
Justra.
Brazilian minis, Justra, everything like that. I collect anything and everything G1, and unfortunately space is not our friend sometimes, and I unfortunately was asked to do I won't mention exactly what it was, but an interview with some great interviewers, and their channel is fantastic. But I can't accommodate because there's just not enough space for even me.
Yeah.
Sometimes in that section. So
well, the other thing then is beyond sort of space and everything, is it would be interesting to hear a couple of bits that you've kind of got going on. We know about Unicron is obviously in your possession, Pink Hot Rod,
Grey
that sort of
Astra Train.
stuff. Yeah, Grey Astra Train. These are all legendary bits as far as G1 collectors go, right? That we all know about these specific items. What, in your mind, beyond those three, let's say, what are maybe the sort of one or two or three bits that you're most proud of?
I absolutely, I love all of it, but I do love Pretenders, and I have three of the known 4 double Pretenders that were unreleased.
Well,
nice.
And I think sort of newer fans, newer collectors that may not know about those, firstly, just Google it, because it's a fascinating read. And secondly, they might know them as, is it the BotCon exclusives? Oil Slick and
Oil Master or something like that, wasn't it?
Oil Master.
Something like that.
Yeah, no, I think it is Oil Master. So there are 2 versions of that. There's one that's all grey and black, and there's one that's sort of red, and they are based off prototypes that I own. And there is another one which is a monster, an alien, which is his companion. I'm very proud of those. In the early days when they were presented at BotCon 96, everyone was like, my goodness, these are incredible. What are these exotic pieces? And they're sort of the stature I'm showing on webcam, but they're quite stout. They're very wide. They're to accommodate 2 Pretenders inside them, and they're solid hand painted resin. Solid.
I was going to say that these are you kind of 1 kilogram.
These are the kilogram, jobbies. Honestly, I just every time I see them, I'm in awe. And there's I will do a rare bots about this, but there's a very specific, really interesting, and I'm smiling as I'm saying this because it's so geek worthy, but the black and grey one is so different to the red one in so many ways. It's not just a different colour, it's a different mould, and there is a letter that comes with it from the creator.
Ooh, wow.
And it tells you what the original backstory was going to be, and it blows my mind. I will say on this podcast, this is an exclusive, that the first one, the grey one, was going to be a Decepticon, and the one after was to be an Autobot, and it was 2 different creators, 2 different sculptors that did both.
Interesting.
And it just fascinates me, that kind of provenance and history, and here it is on a piece of paper.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. Another would be my first Transformer was Wide Loader Throttlebot, my favourite car is a Lamborghini Countach. I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Who really knows?
You know, I've always said Countach, but it's not because I've watched Top Gear. It's Countach. It's an unproduced triple changing throttle bot.
Wait, triple changing?
What?
Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about this on an episode once. I remember I asked you permission to mention it, and I just thought, all right, no, it's a Lambo and a throttle bot, but what's the third mode?
It's like a dasher, so the hood flips up and it's like a run and gun.
No.
What?
Dasher type.
Get
That sounds
out.
amazing.
Saying. And that is like...
Is it the same size as the others?
It is. It's a little more slender. Obviously, what I love about it as well, one of the many things I love about it is it transforms totally differently. And the tyres are so thick at the back, like a proper Countach, you know what I mean? Like it's not, there's no like sort of thin, it's like a fat tyre. It looks like a tank from the tyre. And the top, you pull it back and it springs back to reveal like a dasher gun running mode.
So it fully works as well.
Yeah. No, it's a works and looks like it's hand painted. It's early, you know. It could be sideswipe or it could be just an early. I say just. It could be an early chase.
That's so fascinating. So this presumably would have been at the same time or released at the same time as the other throttle bots, or maybe after. I guess you don't know.
But the thing is, we never know because we had two sort of very different houses here of design, and luckily for all of us involved, it was Japan and it was the US, and this particular piece originated in Japan.
If that particular piece is not a perfect encapsulation of why prototypes are amazing, just the fact that it's a glimpse at here's what you could have had. And here's an amazing feature that nothing else has.
Here's what you could have won.
Here's who it is, and it's a different version of something that is very well loved.
Yeah.
It's just all of those things in one.
It's in my top. I mean, it really is. It blows my mind every single time.
It sounds like it's part throttlebot, part battle charger, and part omnibot almost. It's with really early vibes because it doesn't conform to the same sort of bulkiness as the throttle bots that we know, but it clearly shares the same design ethics. So, you know, it has those early vibes, but early doesn't necessarily mean not finished, which is, I actually think it's quite an important point to touch on, because you can have a really early thing that's finished really well, but then the stage or the piece is changed entirely to then be earlier again than it may have appeared previously. I have some... Well, okay, let's go through it. So I'm also really, really proud of having... I don't profess to know everything about this, by the way, because there are really some mysteries, and I've spoken to... Well, again, I won't say his name, but a former head of the Transformers franchise, and he told... I explained what it was that I had, and it confuses me, and I can get into detail if you want. So it is a hard copy, but likely wax Computron, G1 Computron. Liam's ears just pricked up there.
Oh, is he going to say like Huffer or Gears? No, Computron.
The greatest combiner of them all.
Is he your favourite as well?
Yeah.
Mate.
Cool sci-fi vehicles. It's got
Oh my God.
A drill for a knee. Come on.
Afterburner, and they're all different as well.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you. Liam's my favourite. We're having our own podcast.
Fist bump through the screen.
Yeah. Incredible. What an incredible combiner. And these have the nets of the head, so the sort of cubes, but don't have any faces. So then someone would use a pantograph. They would enlarge. They would do a 2 or a 4.
Computron says no.
Computron says no because he can't. And they would have done the face sculpt separately. So when you see these events where you see just the kind of head sculpts from Takara and they're larger, because it was harder to work on that small of a detail, so it had to be enlarged originally, then sort of reduced via a pantograph. I would say that's up there, and also the same for Abominus.
Amazing.
So what? To clarify, sorry, these are the combiners, it's a prototype Computron and Abominus combiner, which have far less detailed elements, and they're wax prototypes.
Only on the individuals, on the limbs' faces. So they're very, very early, and they are wax, but because the material is different to resin. This is where like you can only do so much research without going to other toy lines and figuring out what they did at the same time. But that's difficult to know because it's a totally different mechanism and so on and so forth. But this person that used to work there, used to head up the whole thing, said to me, because I said resin, because they've got bubbles, the air bubbles, but Scattershot has got on his torso, has got a massive piece of clay, modelling clay, sort of in the side of him. And he said, no, those are the sculpts. And I thought, well, they're not, because it's been cast and moulded. And then I went on this huge rabbit hole of additive and subtractive or passive sculpting. So there is a resin net, and then things are added onto it, wax or clay, and then by using a waxer, it's reduced. So that's the passive or reductive, or however you say it, method of creating these pieces. So it's actually a mixture of all of the skills that the individual at that particular time preferred to use. So there really aren't too many set structures. So it can depend upon the piece and the sculptor. And so that one is a bit of a mystery to me, because it seems to exhibit all of the hard copy and the sculpting and a bit of everything all in one. So that's another a really, really cool piece I'm proud of.
That sounds amazing.
I'd love to see that. I've never seen that one in your collection.
Punch Counterpunch.
Oh,
is a big one for me. He's one of my favourite all time.
Yours is the one with the wheels on the knees, right?
He has the wheels on the knees. So there's another Dasher mode where he sort of half transforms and can scoot along, and he has rubber tires.
Oh, how about that?
And an engine, when you like a really detailed molded engine when you flip it out. Skylinks is another one. I have a painted Skylinks, full Skylinks hard copy.
So would that have been the sort of original Toybox sort of design there?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you can sort of see the paint underneath because it's been repainted. And it's difficult to know if it was sort of a primer for that paint, but it strongly appears to have been black and silver.
Wow. We were talking
There's
about
the Decepticon Skylinks.
Yeah. we were musing about the idea of a Skylinks recolor. This is something that regularly comes up in conversation with us.
Right.
Is toys and why they never got a repaint, and what would that repaint look like? And I'm often fascinated about the idea of just certain things that, could have been recolored into something else, and the idea of like a Nemesis Skylinks almost,
right? And that's what it would be, and that sort of fuels the fans' imagination. And while I don't know for a fact, because there's been no documentation, if it's not written down, it didn't happen, blah blah blah. It seems to have been the main body was black, and the sort of the red tail extensions and the limbs seem to have been sort of silver.
Mad.
Wow.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lovely.
So you're going to have to strip the paint off that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's for the community, that one.
It is.
You're doing it for everyone else.
For the people.
And then put it in a museum.
I'll TikTok it. TikTok it.
Yeah.
I'm cool.
Fantastic.
I know the lingo.
With these, like you're talking about the Computron having the clay and then this one doing the paint, how do you look after them? Like, because obviously these materials like fade over time and crumble and chip. Like, it must be really hard to maintain them.
Yeah, I don't handle them too much. I don't I have transformed them, and it was nail biting,
harrowing.
It was harrowing at best. But I'm curious. I think it's for the pursuit of knowledge, but not at the expense of the piece. I mean, they are displayed in glass cabinets, and I do hope to do some sort of display on my Facebook Rarebots page. I'm not sure, but yeah, they sort of seem to hold their form because they were built with a really strong purpose of being displayed in mind, because they are to be showcased, and you think, well, this was 38, 35 years ago, and it just shows the workmanship, the craftsmanship that these people, I mean, they really are something else. Don't be silly. Don't, play with them and like the commercials with the Predaking, which is a whole nother conversation.
Well, I've seen some pictures of various prototypes of Predaking or what have you in there. I think, was it in the pre-Toy Fair catalogue, the
pre-Toy
86
Fair 86?
Yeah. There's one in there, isn't there, that looks quite different.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting. There's a few prototypes that I have seen. Again, I can't explain everything. It's you just sort of go through it by learning. But there's a few prototypes which really stick out and go make you think, well, I've never seen that before or since. Predaking, the early hard copies is a prime example of that, because the method in which they were created seems to lend itself to the subjective nature of the people who create them, or were sort of leading that charge at that time in R&D. Cast to colour is a phrase that has been, in the last 3 years, used from a former employee to describe the resin that isn't clear, that isn't white, that hasn't been painted. It's been actually cast in the colours that they were intended to be released. And that seems to be with G2. I've never seen it with G1 apart from Predaking.
Oh, just that one-off.
Just that one-off.
Piece.
They're not painted. They're actually, the resin is the colour of the intended release. So the black is actually black resin. The orange, the yellow, it's just bare resin that is the colour it was intended for release. And I've never seen it with anything else. And it's a mystery to me as to why they decided to do that process with that particular toy.
Anything to do with the fact that Predaking had a different designer to most of the other toys at the time?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that I can think of. I don't know. That's the only thing that I can think of, because it just doesn't... There is also a quick mix that I have, which is a first shot. It's plastic, and it's all grey. It's very, 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 very rare for a G1 piece to not be even in close proximity to the intended release, because they don't want to waste money. It's not about trying different things out. It's not about what the factory was using at the time. So it had to have a purpose, but I don't know what that purpose is.
So whether they would have actually put the toy out in grey in some sense, or...
Yeah, I guess so. But then you think, well, that would have been or maybe the base colour was grey and they were just going to add a few. If you think about the drum, he was originally the drum was white, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So maybe the drum was sort of, the grey was the more predominant plastic, and they just didn't do the paint apps. But there's a reason for it. But I've only ever seen it with that the Huffer, which
the Huffer I was going to ask you about. That's actually not resin, is it? That Huffer?
No, the Huffer is not resin. But we, as you kind of talk with other collectors on forums, and each different person has a theory, which I love about this, by the way, because there is no finite thing when it comes to speculation with pre-production. You can do that with production because numbers make sense on parts and so on and so forth. As difficult as it is, it's almost impossible to do with pre-production because you have to be inside the head of the designer at the time and all this kind of stuff. But someone said that it's possible that it was the Mysterion.
Oh yeah, of course.
Which makes sense because the arms are chromed. It's all grey. The Mysterion was all grey. Why not?
So that's the unreleased line of G1 mini-bots that was in a book recently called Mysterions.
Yeah, it all came to light. Then this is sort of pre-microchange almost, isn't it?
Yeah. So Microchange Takara got the designs from the Mysterions lot, which, if I'm not mistaken, was it a British? Was it a British line or not?
I think so, from memory. I would need to... It's been a while since I've watched old Chris McFeely's vid. He did a very useful vid about it.
Right.
It's been a while since I've watched that, for example.
Yeah, I need to have a refresher on that. But I mean, those things are fascinating because it's only when someone just suggests something or unless they bring evidence to light, you're like, oh, damn, I didn't even consider that as a possibility.
Raz, what would be, sort of maybe turning the question back on you then, what would be the things that something that you know about that someone else has, or, it's out there somewhere, the sort of one thing, if you like, and maybe something that you don't know if it's out there or not, but you would like.
Something that I don't know is out there, as in terms of collector's hands, or don't know exists.
Maybe don't know exists even, something that, whether it's from a catalogue or something that you just have no clue if such a thing was ever made.
In terms of knowing that it exists but don't know where it would be, it would have to be RC for me.
Yeah.
I mean, without a doubt, RC was a huge character in this lore, and I'm a big movie and Rebirth fan, so RC. Would they have done a Headmaster version, though? I know they were planning to, but if they would have released RC in 86, which they should have done if they were going to release it in 87, what would they have done to the Headmaster version? Is that what Chrome Dome would have been an addition to, as opposed to an instead of? Right?
Well, that's what we talked about at the time when we did that episode, was it would be very rare for them to do a repaint of an existing mold. That was a very rare thing at the time.
Really, really, really rare. Unheard of, actually, at that point.
This is something that honestly fascinates me about that era of G1, is once you move past Diaclone and, of course, and all microchange and everything, when you get into the new molds, particularly from 87 onwards, there are no repaints. Where are all the repaints? There's stuff like Great Shot, which is a retool, fine. And there's a couple of, like a bare handful of examples. But really, there are none. Absolutely none. Most new molds are one and done. So the idea that, particularly something from the 87 line, that they were going to release another version of the Chrome Dome mold, to me, it just seems so out of step with everything else.
No, and everything that I can think of is Japan exclusive. It's Artfire, it's Stepper, it's Twincast Sound Blaster, it's Great Shot, and that's along with Sound Blaster is a retool, which is not a cheap thing to do.
No, but that's the thing, and
it's
you're right. Normally,
is it?
And normally the recolors, as you say, they're an instead of, aren't they, as opposed to an as well as. So, like, Ranger or whatever. But
I mean, they weren't short of money. I spoke to the former VP during the time, and up until the movie, they had grossed 360 million. This is 1986.
Yeah.
They didn't need to make money on the recolors, and 360 million.
Yeah, it's quite a world away from now, isn't it? Where I'm not saying that they don't do well now, but you can see that these repaints and things are built in to those designs. It's just a very different
and
process.
What would you have said? Maybe not at the time, but after the fact, to a blue misfire that has a different bio.
It hasn't gone live at the time of recording this, but in our previous episode, so you won't have heard this, but in our previous episode, we were saying what a shame it was that there's no Japanese recolors of Slapdash and Getaway, and that having recolors of toys like that, we were talking about like a red and white Slapdash, for example, kind of Formula One colors.
You say that, but there is a prototype of that.
Well, there is, which I discovered after the recording only.
Oh yeah, it was shown at that exhibition a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Or 2, 3, 4 years ago, where they had the interesting Galvatron as well.
Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff.
I'm unaware of that, if I'm honest. But I mean, I don't know if we're saying names here, but there's a prominent collector who has some pieces that I would very much like. Has had a website since the late 90s, and one of those photos, or one of those pictures on his site, is a picture of a photograph from a former employee of Getaway, Joyride, and Slapdash in the same colours, and they're all Getaway colours.
Wow.
All of them are white, grey, puce, and whatever.
I bet that looks lovely.
Yeah, I'll send you the link after the fact. But it's that did exist, and whether that was intentional or just because we don't know which one's going to be in this colour, but we love this palette.
Yeah. Maybe so.
Very, very 80, very late 80s, wasn't it? 88. That's purple.
Fascinating.
Well, that just about covers what we were going to willingly fit into this episode on prototypes and pre-production. So thank you, Raz, so much for coming on, but don't go yet. We need you for something.
Uh-oh.
And, we would love to have you on again and talk about more specific prototype things. The word Unicron has been mentioned today. So that would be a lovely thing to do in the future if you're up for it. And I know everyone would love to hear more about that. And if you do love to hear more Triple Takeover, then please do check us out on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Triple Takeover. There's 40 plus minisodes. We've got 3 concurrent miniseries running now: IDW, Unicron Trilogy, Tatman, loads of stuff. And there will be even more than that. And just off air, Raz has sort of mentioned that he's into the same tat as Liam. So, there's lots of fun opportunities.
Good stuff.
So we're going to have a
new podcast coming soon.
God. Tatman and Robin.
There's been a murder.
I can't say anything. I've got nothing.
There's been a murder.
There's been a murder.
Thanks for listening, guys. Good night.
That's it. Liam's out now.
But yes, if you want more of that, and there is plenty more of that, please check us out on Patreon. You can also join our Discord server if you sign up at Inner Beast and higher, and then you get access to a fantastic community of fans, a total oasis in the fandom, and that is not an exaggeration. But yeah, patreon.com/Triple Takeover. So much more. I should also mention that we have Patreon perks that we usually run through in the episode, and one of those perks is asking a question. And since we have Raz, we can include him on this as well. And I think this is an ideal question, and it's from someone that you know, Raz. It's from Tim Banerjee.
Hey, Tim.
And his question is, never in my wildest dream did I ever think I'd own. So he says, what for you stands out as being the one TF you never thought you'd ever add to your collection? It could be, but doesn't have to be the rarest or most expensive. It could be something you refused to buy or really hated until, well, years later you were convinced otherwise. So basically, what do you own that you never thought you would?
Well, I bet Tim, when he put this question down, didn't imagine that this was going to be going to the man himself, Raz. So,
well, that bugger Tim has had a thing in his collection that most of us have wanted for decades and not been
Mexican
able to
smokescreen.
Right, so he can't say a word.
It's so funny. Hey Tim, I found pictures the other day on my hard drive of
Tim?
His smokescreen. Of Tim in his shorts. Yeah, his Mexican smokescreen was pictured on a table in Transforce 2001 or what? Yeah, 2002, whatever it was. So, you can't really talk, Tim.
All right, but what about you lot? Look, what did you never think you'd own?
For me, it's always the obvious one. It was G1 Swoop, because as a kid, obviously, didn't come out here, never had it, wasn't even convinced it existed for so long. And it was just something I just resigned myself to never having, because I never really thought about it through my teens so much. And then finally getting it was just amazing. It's incredible. And I still can't believe that I own it.
Oh, man. Swoop is such a good G1 toy.
Yeah, agreed.
Like
the first time I got to see it in real life, I just still couldn't believe it was right in front of me.
I had the same experience with Swoop and Shockwave and Omega Supreme.
Yeah.
Like
those three, you just think, wow.
I was just going to say Shockwave is a fantastic choice for that.
And Omega Supreme as well. These guys got me that for my birthday.
Yeah.
So this year, or last year. So it's fantastic, man. Just opening that for the first time. A toy I've seen a picture of 7 times. It just in person, it's so different. You're like, whoa.
Everything does something on that piece.
Yeah.
It's funny, actually, because I suppose I was tempted for my answer to say something like Black Zarek, G1 Black Zarek or Metro Titan. Which is,
you may not have thought you would get it, but
but only because it's sort of such top tier Japanese G1. It's so legendary, all of that. That there is an element of like something like the Metro Titan when it arrived, and I was looking at it, I was like, I just can't believe this is in my house. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like a real. You see it in pictures so often that actually when it's there in front of you, it's kind of like, how has this happened? But in a funny way, actually something like Shockwave is almost has that feeling even more, just because it's got the childhood bit baked in as well. Whereas like Black Zarek, I wouldn't have been aware of until I was an adult.
That's an adult thing, yeah. Shockwave was a big thing for me, as was Swoop, and
exactly. So I think there is still, I look at Metro Titan, Black Zarek, and all those things every day. Star Saber as well, and to some extent, I look at them every day and think, "Wow." No, but I'm making a point and saying,
I look at him every day.
Maz, I think he's only doing this because you and Raz have both talked about all these exciting prototype things you've had, so he's had to get in there. Did you know I've got a Black Zarek and a
No.
Metro
I've not,
Titan?
I've
Did
not
you know?
owned any unproduced G2, have I, Maz, or anything like that?
Flexos in the house.
You know, old Maz Brags over there.
I don't own them anymore.
Ultra Maz Brags.
Flex 1.
I think my point was going to be actually that something like Shockwave is a great answer for that, purely because
Really
it does
good
have the nostalgia baked into it.
Yeah,
But it does, and the first time for me, because we didn't have them in the UK, it was just like, oh wow, this is serious.
That group of toys, that 85 group of toys that weren't released here, they're so special to all of us, I think.
Yeah.
Maz, you were going to say Razor Beast, I presume?
He's taking his funny pills tonight.
Port wings. No. Well, to be fair, I never thought I'd own it. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
That's a very good shout. I never thought I'd own that.
Perfect answer.
I think it has to be old Blue Streak over there. I really never thought I'd own one of those. But also Shockwave and Ramjet. There was a time back in 1998 when I was getting back into Transformers where, where were you going to find Transformers? Where were you going to find Transformers? And then I learnt about collectors shops like Craig in South London in Croydon, and an Offworld. And going to Offworld and seeing a Fort Max, a Shockwave, a Predaking, and a Swoop all for sale is just like fantasy land.
Fort Max is a great shout.
That was one of those things. But yeah, I think originally it would have been Ramjet. I never would have thought I'd finally get a G1 Ramjet. And that's the first thing I bought on the internet off digital toys. Shockwave was the second thing I bought off the internet. That was off eBay with a money order from BidPay.
Bid pays.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Shockwave seems to be across the board.
Yeah, it's that kind of toy.
Well, it's such a different time as well. Like, you think back to then, you didn't see these toys in shops. You didn't have eBay and stuff like that. So you were like, you never thought I would get those toys. Whereas now, it's just all accessible. You can just, stuff might be expensive, but you can still get it.
Yeah,
I wrote a letter to Hasbro asking for Omega Supreme, and they were like, "We don't."
Really?
Well, you say about letters to Hasbro. One of our member has a mum who got pretty angry about a Weetabix thing and wrote to Hasbro or Weetabix and got the entire range of Gold Box classics sent to his house.
It was a great day. One of the best days of my life. One of the first parcels I ever got was this ginormous parcel of Gold Box classic stuff.
I need to complain more often.
Yeah.
She still doesn't know what she said or why. She just remembers she was very annoyed. I don't remember why.
The rage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think she could still
play.
complain to Hasbro now? Like she could write off to them now and just.
I mean,
get you...
they've absolutely got gold box classics.
I was
still.
just thinking they could get him a load of legacy toys or something. Do you know what I mean? Just get your mum to write off.
Maybe just find all those Beast Machines toys that they could never sell just on the back of the sofa.
Yeah, I mean, both of those.
Well, someone's picked up the vibe of the show and has read the room. Okay, but Raz, what's your answer then?
I mean, Unicron. It's been my holy grail since I saw it, since I knew that a toy, a physical specimen existed. Grey Astra Train is another.
Do you know what I find kind of funny now? Is that I remember when I was at school having at least one friend on the playground who insisted that they had a G1 Unicron. They had the Unicron toy, not G1 at the time.
We're those kids.
Right.
we know someone.
Oh yeah, do you know Marcus? He had a Unicron, but he lost it when he went on holiday to Forteventura.
Exactly, it's all of that, and it was always the fact that you went round to this kid's house, and then it was like, where is it then? And,
It's in the loft.
My mum's put it away. All of that.
Yeah,
Jetfire. It was always Jetfire.
It's in the caravan.
Well, it's not. It's very convenient. I had the same thing with the Sideswipe. I thought, can I just see it?
No, it's in the caravan.
Is it?
I suppose in many ways, I may not have a Unicron, but I'm just happy to have got to a point in my life where I have a friend that has a Unicron finally. Do you know what I mean? And it's real.
It blows my mind, honestly. And
That's a pretty good answer to that.
It's
question,
an emotional. It's an emotional answer as well. Like it's a long journey to find and all the rest. And I'm very proud of that. Very
Take that,
proud.
Tim. That's for you and your smoke screen.
Tim.
Yes.
You and your IGA smokescreen. I will give some other answers though, because I have to say, Omega Supreme was a huge deal to me. When I first saw him, I'd sort of idolized over the Aiken and Garvey. The Universe book.
Oh yeah.
So I thought, oh my god, I haven't even seen this yet in a catalogue, and then I got that broadside that I mentioned. Ratbat was one because he was so wide. Daru and Zoru.
Oh yeah.
Gold Browning.
Yeah.
Was something I just lusted after.
And let's just be clear, this is the campaign prize gold chromed Browning, not just the regular rose gold one.
Yeah, this is the all gold chromed prize. The 6 white headmaster warriors.
Yeah, was that the day you bought them?
Yeah.
I've heard about these before, as in that you had them.
Raiden Jr.
Wow.
I remember when you were looking for that.
I mean, I saw posts probably about a year ago. It just sort of bizarrely came onto Yahoo groups.
I don't think Tim deserves more of an answer here. I think Tim has got what he deserves.
Tim is going to take it, and he's going to
like it. Yeah.
Stop it! He's dead.
I'm going to bore him to death with my voice.
Well, speaking of voice, we have another patron perk, which is a shout out for all of our Sixos Butlers and Goldbox Classics. So, in my own voice this time, a massive thank you to Nick, Danny, Roberts, Andy Preston, Chris Spiderfather, Adam Shoemaker, Matt, Stephen Perkins, Bad Saturday, Justin Massaro, Dave Dalrymple, Gio Kaiser, Yusuf, John Pearl, Choice of Anthony Cars, Alec Midge, Captain Array, Phil G, Jacques Pelletier, Roger Storm, Stuart Webb, Amar, Laserbeak, Puma the Hunter, Legend Mike, Peter Hammerson, Shenry, Chris Norris, Jesse Moreno, Nexus, Jimowin, Aaron Swoboda, Billy Gator, Andy Gold, Cold Squall, Simon Elvin, Josh Misha Kid, Cracktastic Plastic, Devastator, Jeffrey Freak, Nice Sideburns, Andy, Inbound Lee, John Wood, Kyler Wilmot, Tim Banerjee, there he is again, Ben Lewis, Shinsei, Lucas Enkel, Mollis Koenig, Malcolm Hobbs, CNC, Rick 56, not CNC Music Factory, Mythic Gears, Zach Lawson, Jason Murray, David Shepard of Steam, Quick Mix, Josh Bell, Ashbolt, Zindios, Christian Hyatt, Mark Ali, Andrew Bentley, Graham Moffat, Connor Seabrook, Perrotta, Eric White, Bobby P, Mike Locono, Near Bat, Tyler Husky, Chris Rodwell, Steve Redmond, Fart Warp, Shawnee Sean, Jim Kinsey, Shaunty Siegel, you know Shaunty, don't you, Raz? James Pascoe, Ghost Prime. Did you know it was Shaunty? That's how you say his name, Shaunty Siegel.
No.
Yeah, he told me it's Shaunty. And he says no one's ever pronounced it right in his life. So thank you, Shaunty, for reaching out and giving me the correct pronunciation. Jickle, MK Tronic, Hodert Walter, you know Hodert as well. Charlie Chappelle, Maddie Clark, Jonathan False Logic Howard, Alexis Taylor, Windows 6K, Teku James, Tyler Dickinson, Jeremy Woodall, Ross, Jetfire James, Dog Lunch UK, a Saucy Fellow, this is my favourite part down here, Absurd, Keith, Freedom is the Right, Anthony Strome, Michael Cagle, Duggatron, Big Doug, Hugh McKinney, Thomas Anderson, Squid Catfish, Rob Packerbush, Stevie P, Ali Nunes, Cannon, and a big thank you to our new butlers and GBCs, Robert R, Duckstar, that's our mate Nick, Heinrad 80, Fuzigi, Toy Pocket, John R, and the Mapes Brothers, who we all recognise. What a list.
What a list.
Toy Pocket. That's a euphemism.
Toy Pocket is a great name.
Was that your impression of Blur, Maz?
Yeah.
Speed of that.
I did say, as most weeks, I try to be Blur.
I was about to say, that's a long name. Crikey.
Yeah.
Just one patron every time. That's it.
Yeah, just one guy.
Notice your name's not on that list, Raz.
Yeah, all yours.
I've paid in other ways.
Yeah.
We also have a sponsor for the evening, so big thank you and shout out to tfsource.com. Do check them out for all your Transformers and third-party needs.
If you want some non-rare stuff, you can head over to our Rebel store at rebel.com/people/triple takeover/explore. Go and buy some t-shirts.
I'd also like to thank the new subscribers to mine and Liam's new podcast, Twatman and Robin.
Yes.
Thanks for listening.
Oh, it's Twatman now, I notice. I didn't say that.
Twatman.
Can I be Robin in this story?
that was assumed. To all of our subscribers, honestly, we thank both of you. It's a real pleasure.
I don't know how we end now. I'm going to be stuck on Twatman and Robin.
No.
Oh, dear.
So if you've enjoyed this episode and you a lot of things you want to talk about, if you need to contact us and talk about anything you've
Nailed it.
Oh, well.
If there's anything you would like to talk to us about, you can find us on social media at @triple_takeover on Instagram and Twitter, and at triple takeover, all one word, on Facebook. Lads, where can they find you guys?
Seamless.
Yeah, I am at TFsquareone on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
I'm at Sixo TF on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube and Patreon.
Raz, how about you?
Nothing.
Don't exist.
Don't bother looking.
Rarebotts.
Yeah, where's your robots?
Apart from that.
Yeah.
Rarebot's something.
On Raz's behalf, check out Rarebots on Facebook. It's incredible. Well worth a look.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, I've forgotten, but your most recent post was about Generation 2 Road Rocket, wasn't it? And that
Yeah,
was actually
it
something that we
was.
were
Yep.
talking about in our
Yeah.
previous episode quite a lot.
was.
Yes, indeed.
Quite a lot.
It's an interesting change from like the block kind of
Yeah. Looks
works
it.
like to the looks like, you know. Yeah, beautiful piece.
Big thank you, by the way, Raz. I know
Thank
we said
you.
it already.
Thank you
No,
so
no,
much.
Absolute
Huge-
pleasure to have you on, mate.
Huge
Absolute
thank you
pleasure.
for coming on.
It's a pleasure to be on, and I didn't realise that again. I was the first person to be a guest on here, so it really does mean a lot to me. And even though I'm not a subscriber, fine, but I'm a fan.
As long as you've liked and rated.
No. No.
Shared, followed.
Get on Apple, leave a review.
Yeah.
Twatman and Robin at. No, really, thank you so much for having me on. I'm a fan of yours, and you guys are absolutely killing it. So I'm humbled to be a part of this fantastic podcast. So
Thank you so much.
Like, subscribe, and be a Patreon for these guys because they deserve it.
Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you.
I'm at Toybox Soapbox anyway, isn't that? And yeah, like Raz said, look out for our upcoming podcast on trading cards.
Yeah.
Well, that'll about do us for the evening. Thanks again to Raz for joining us, and see you next time.
See you next time.
Measures golden balls.